bedroom shadows, cloaked and haunting me, cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me, tapping at my window. I can't bear to open my eyes, a breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed. Ghostly apparition hovering over me, asking what it wants to know. I'm shaking now, it calls out my name, cloaked and haunting me, cold hand touching me, fear overwhelming me, tapping at my window. I can't bear to open my eyes, a breath on my neck, floating apparitions everywhere. Go to sleep with the light on, I wake up paralyzed.
A nervousness born from the earth, my madness came by storm. I heard heaven and hell, but how can I be mad? Across the table, I'll tell you the tale. I wanted for nothing from the old man, not even gold. I'll tell no lie, it was the old man's eye, a veiled pale blue eye peering into it. My blood ran cold, and my heart is where I hold a secret plan for this old man. A descent into madness, it cannot be, it was the old man, not me. A pounding, a beating, the heart kept screaming. They think me mad, but how for madness knows nothing. I sit here, my mind clear, this tale I tell. Are these the sounds from hell? 7 days I crept planning, but never did the eye reveal itself till that night. A slip, a sound awakened did he, but I could not flee. I felt his fear that we tried to comfort and steer his dread, for he lay back in his bed. In flash I jumped on him, dragging him down. Now no more sound, he lie there dead on the ground. A descent into madness, it cannot be, it was the old man, not me. A pounding, a beating, the heart kept screaming. Both fear and glee swept over me. No one would ever find the body. Sometime now they came, sat chatting, but I could hear it, the heart beating. It grew louder and louder, I could no longer contain myself as I slid the chair. They still stayed there, not leaving, my anxiety rising. Could they not hear the beating heart coming from beyond the dark? No longer could I stand it, came my admittance. Here it is, the beating of his hideous heart. A descent into madness. It cannot be, it was the old man, not me. A pounding, a beating, the heart kept screaming. There's no place for old men, a breed going extinct, as the youth coddles each other, and love appears to be in the air. Breeze singing and trees living, a time of generations dying. The sea is full, yet so many are falling. Born to die in neglect, with their unaging intellect. To ages to be forgotten, the world is promised to the young. I will travel to eternity where age cannot go. I shall transcend this life so bold. How age makes a man invisible. He wanders alone, tattered as his clothes. Forgotten soul finds song in his heart. Monuments of magnificent, the seas have taken me to Byzantium. To ages to be forgotten, the world is promised to the young. I will travel to eternity where age cannot go. I shall transcend this life so bold. Sages standing in holy fire, spiraling as the masters of my soul sing. Desire overwhelming, don't deny but consume my heart. I know not what it is. Take me to eternity and unknown things. To ages to be forgotten, the world is promised to the young. I will travel to eternity where age cannot go, and I shall transcend this life so once free from this body, I'll never come back again. Not to this place I'll be where goldsmiths work. To entertain the lords and ladies of Byzantium, it matters not what is the past, or what is passing, or is to come. To ages to be forgotten, the world is promised to the young. I will travel to eternity where age cannot go, and I shall transcend this life so bold. Bleak December, Edgar's Raven, nevermore. Came a rap and a gentle tapping, the ghosts of embers lying on the floor, wishing for tomorrow, my sweet Lenore, nameless there forevermore. The silken purple curtains drew out my fear like terror I never felt before, brought back to my wonder, who could be at my door? Is it a man or a woman I implore? The darkness there and nothing more. Out like a light that night, a rapping came tapping at my door. Is this the end? Forevermore. Into the darkness I gazed, stood fear and doubt, a nightmare it seems, but only a dream. The stillness and silence unbroken, till I whispered Lenore and your name came back. Only this and nothing more. A burning in my soul as I turn from the door. But the tapping
All right, guys. Let's get this started here. How you doing, guys? Welcome to Paranormal Roundtable. I'm your host, Josh Turner, and this is PRT. Join us in the real reality. Sorry we're getting in late, but it's work. Hope everybody had a good Father's Day. Mine was pretty uneventful. I just had a lot of things I had to do, for, talking to people and getting things done. We've been so busy with work. We just haven't had time to do much. It's just been kind of one thing after the other with work. I mean, it's I don't know. Seems like it's more work and less money. Letting the chat fill up, and see as we get some people in here. Yeah, my shirt is a Legion of Doom. It's the Road Warriors. The Road Warriors. Not a big wrestling fan. I mean, admittedly, I'm not real big into that, but I like the Road Warriors when I was a kid. They're pretty much my only real favorite wrestlers. But I kind of liked Hulk Hogan too. I think everybody as a kid, you liked Hulk Hogan. Whatever.
Yeah, I liked Hulk Hogan when I was a kid.
I think I missed the trash there.
I missed the boat on the Legion of Doom though. They were before my time.
Well, because Hulk Hogan just stayed around so long.
Yeah.
That's why you were able to like him.
Yeah, he was around till the late 90s, I think,
That was
at least.
crazy. Well, that was longer than that. Sean, thank you for that donation. We greatly appreciate it. We are going to be, right now we just don't have the time, but we will be moving things to paywall. You know, it sounds bad when you say paywall, but I mean, just we got to put it behind our website. Multiple reasons too now, because we're being advised now because the people won't stop attacking us. So, you know, and people say, well, they want to run you off of your live stream, so you're doing what they want. Well, I don't care what it just, I don't want to mess with, I don't want these people. I'm just done. I don't care. I don't give a crap. You know, people that comment or whatever, you're not living the hell that we are. We're not living our lives. You don't know what we go through with these people.
It's not fun.
Where they've made their entire existence about destroying us, which shows you how absolutely goofy they are. Because who lives their lives trying to wreck another person's life, like some kind of deranged ex?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it's just nuts, man. I mean, like, dude, get a life, dude. I mean, they obviously they don't invest in anything, time, money, or soap. And they, you know, and they just, their whole existence isn't even about doing any of this. They don't, because he doesn't believe in any of this. The main guy, the main one. I think the other ones might, but they're all deceived by him. And but you know, by his own admission to some people that are close to him, like he doesn't believe in any of this. This is absolutely a grift for them. And when you make videos of people in bunny costumes, it's like, dude,
that was priceless, though.
I mean, golly, dude, like, how bad is it? You're a sick, evil person, dude. I mean, you're just an evil, grifting person. And you want me to talk about you, dude. But the thing is, it's going to get you some negativity. That's all it's going to get you. And it's a very short-lived energy.
Short burning, yeah.
You're going to get it, but and then you're going to be a laughingstock, which is what happened. You know, but there are people who really do believe in this stuff, and they send us their encounters, and you know, so we're getting burned out. I'm getting burned out with work. I'm getting burned out with this. I'm getting burned out with life, period. If my mind was if I was a lesser person and my mind was weak, I think I would just cash it in. I'd be that kind of guy, but I'm not. I'm not just going to go, you know, well, see ya, you know, leave everybody else to twist and spin.
No, because then you'd be leaving everyone at their mercy.
Yeah. Got a little thing here. If anybody's wondering, there's probably, you know, out at the ranch, and we have these wild cats. I don't mean like wild cats. I mean like they're wild. They're what would you call them? Domesticated.
They're domesticated, but
kind of, but they're left
cats.
alone.
Evil bastards.
Yeah.
But they're domestic cats, like, you know, house cats. But they're just, they
Wander the property.
Yeah, they wander our property out there, and
they serve a purpose outside.
Yeah,
they kill a lot of the rodents.
Yeah. I don't know about what they do. I just they do. They're nice to a degree, but they're mean.
Yeah.
So you got the couple of them are older. They're nice. You can pet them. You can
Younger ones.
Now, if I petted them, they'd be like, "Oh, what's up?" But if a person they don't know pet them, they bite your eyeballs out. They go up and they claw your face open and shit. That's how they are.
They're guard cats.
They're guard cats.
Yeah,
I'll say that. Yeah, they'll kill a snake.
Yeah.
I saw a dead snake out there one night. I was like, "Oh, look at that!" I moved. I was like, "Oh." And Bobby, the one cat, he was out there looking at me, wagging his tail.
I did that
with his one eye or whatever it is. He's mean, evil dude. They technically belong to my cousin, but they literally created a cat colony.
Yeah.
I was like, was that your plan? They're like, no, it just happened. They escaped.
It's like Lord of the Flies.
I was
with
like,
cats.
So did you have them locked up? No, they weren't locked up. They didn't escape. They were free to come and go, and they created their own Lord of the Flies.
They just showed up one day and started taking over.
Cousin cats, exactly, Sean. They're cousin cats.
They're gonna conquer the planet one day.
So what ends up happening? They get into a fight with one of the dogs because there's some dogs out there. You know, you can't have a ranch without dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the cats gets into a fight with the dog. Me and my brother tried to break it up, and one of them, which I don't think he would normally mess with me, but he didn't. He was just going crazy, and he went up my shirt and got my shoulder, my arm,
scratch.
And he got me good, man. He didn't bite me, he bit D, but he scratched me, clawed me up because he was freaking out. And you know, when one of the dogs was fighting two of them, And he's a mean dog. Like, he's able to handle himself, but the cats were like,
They got him a couple times.
they were able to handle themselves too. We're trying to bring it. But Anthony did the smart thing. He went inside because it just happened. I was just there outside in the back and it popped off, and there's a fence back there where we were at, a bunch of fences, different sections, different animals. And Anthony put on some big gloves that would cover most of his, well, not up to his elbow, but I mean, he
went pretty far up his forearm.
Yeah, he was able to.
They were like
he
dishwasher
had
gloves.
the rubber gloves.
Yeah.
Dishwasher gloves. Were they?
They might have been. I don't know.
I mean, I would have put those on if it was. Amy said, "Put the water hose." Yeah, that ended up happening. We got it taken under control. It was crazy though because it's been raining every day.
Mm-hmm.
And like the cats act like they're pissed off. They're like, "It's rain. It's your fault. It's your fault." I'm like, "Dude, why are you on my porch? I don't even own you.
You don't even live here."
These cats, they're like, "No one owns us." And I tell you, one of them's real gangster. Like, I walked in, and I looked over at him, and I'm like, "Hey," I just named him Garfield because he looks, and he's like this. He's like, yeah. And I was like, did he just do that to me? So I like rationalize it in my mind. I'm like, oh no, he was doing the sign of the cross, and I caught the tail end of it. That's what it was. So I told everybody, I said, I think that cat, he's got a problem with me. I go out there and he's like, tonight, you. I'm like, what was that? And he's like, tonight, you. I'm like, sounds kind of like he's threatening me or something. Like he said, tonight, you. What does that mean? He gets up and stretches. He's like, oh, we'll see. I'm like, what?
Could have sworn one of those cats did a throat slice towards me.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. He did kind of like this. I don't know what he was doing. I noticed that he does that though with his paw. He'll move like he's scratching, throat, but it looks like he's giving us the execution sign. So I did what anybody would do. I picked him up by his tail and spun him around like the Incredible Hulk and threw him into a tree.
As you do.
And then he did this by accident.
Puny cat.
He didn't mean to do it. He was actually very appreciative that I threw him like that.
He was just trying to give you a hug.
Yeah, he came back to give me a hug. He was giving me dap.
Aggressive hug on that one arm.
He was giving me dap. He was like, "Hey man, that was good. That was a good throw." But he kind of called me over to him. He's like, "Hey, come here." And I walked up to him. He's like, "Ah!" And he got me. I couldn't believe I fell for that one. The old cat whispering in your ear trick. I was like, "Dude, you ain't gonna get me with that." And I
Oldest trick in the book.
I did. I went over there. I was like, "Hey, what's up?" And then he just attacked me, and I threw my arm up and
catapult.
Folks, we're just funning until we get to 300. But no, the cats did. They're pretty. Yeah, I was thinking about getting them declawed, but then they wouldn't be very good at doing stuff outdoors. Yeah.
And there's
how you gonna catch them and make them?
I was gonna say there's a lot of the cats.
Slip some tiger tranquilizer. Yeah. There you go. Here, kitty. I got something for you. One of your really, really big relatives will get knocked out by this, and me in a facility at one time too. So, yeah, they used to do that to us when we were locked up. You get into a fight, and whatever, they just give it to you. I don't know how they can justify giving that to kids, especially when you ain't even doing nothing. Lawrence says, I saved a baby bird today, but I put him back in the tree, and now his mama won't feed him. Now that baby bird is probably starving. Way to go. You proud of yourself, Lawrence? Look at what you did. Lawrence. A bird is now destitute. Anyways. So I talked to my dad today. I called him. I said, hey, how's it going? He's kind of getting up there and grumpy. He's like, I'm still here.
I'm just waiting for my dad to go get finished with the milk, and then he's told me he's going to celebrate.
Yeah, he did that back in 2004, didn't he?
Oh, I didn't even know he was there in 2004. I just received a letter on my birth. I'll be back with some milk.
Wow. So so what are you, 28 now? What are you?
27.
27 years old. And your dad, so you were born in 98. Mm-hmm. So your dad left when you
99.
Were in 99?
Oh, my mom left my dad in 99.
So it's her fault?
No. He cheated on her.
You got to blame somebody.
It was definitely his fault.
Have you,
At least he didn't do the old "you look like your dad" thing, because I heard that like all the damn time.
yeah, that gets old. real
My mom would
fast.
be yelling and screaming at me, "Up and down, you don't clean your room. Up and down, you sneak out of the house.
Just
Up
like
and
you
down, you left me." I'm like, what? What? What was that last part? Clean your room. I was like, you said something else after that. You said something else. What was that last part? I didn't understand the last part. That's what you get. And she closed the door, and you're like, did she say I left her? She lets it slip. You left me with this damn kids. And my mom and dad didn't cheat on each other. They were just mean to each other. Because the best case scenario in my house was like if they were two ships passing in the night. That's what you wanted, was that kind of sweet spot where she was getting off at 11, coming home by 12 or whatever, and then my dad would be going to work or something. Maybe they would just miss each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then you were just like, oh, peace, because my dad was on shift work. But then there was the times where my mom was always on that swing shift when she was managing. And then there was the time when, my dad would be on the swing shift too. Both of these effers going to work at 3:00 in the afternoon and getting home at the same time. That was the lovely part of my life right there. And you would just hear, you hear the door open and close. So I go to the bedroom. I'd be in there playing Nintendo or whatever I'm doing. I had my own phone line for a little while, talking to my friends, talk to my friend Heather all the time. Her dad and my dad were like really good friends, and her mom and my mom were really good friends. And strangely enough, both of our dads are still alive. Both of our moms are deceased. But you're on the phone, and I'd be like, oh hell, and I'd always be on like a 3-way conversation with some, like one of them. We had that little party line thing, whatever. And you could actually talk. Even back then, you could have we thought we were badass because you could talk to your friends at the same time. It was amazing. It was an amazing technology. And then when they came out with the caller ID, you're like, oh, I can see who's calling now. Yep. Some people didn't want to hear from me, so I had to do the star 69 or what's the star, whatever. So they're not gonna know it's me. I'd be like, yes, you owe me money for your newspaper route. I had to always do that. I was always stalking people for their money. Why do you put it on a kid to make them pay? That's ridiculous. So I would hear the door open and close again, 15, 20 minutes. And my dad would drive from Rockdale, so he would get home right at about the same time. My mom, usually a little bit before her. So my mom, they closed the store at 11, and then she would be there till 12 something. Unless they did like an inventory, she'd be home like 1. Sometimes it was like once a week. And my dad, he must have drove like crazy fast. Well, he did, because he always did. And he would it was probably, from Rockdale to Taylor, it's probably like, what, a good 30 minutes?
Yeah.
My dad could do that in 15. And it depends on, sometimes after work, he would have to do a little something because he was like a shift lead or something. I remember that. And I remember he would come home and I'd be like, oh, hell, I heard the door open. I'd be on the phone with Keith and Heather. Well, I got to go. My parents are about to start fighting. She's like, close the door. I'm like, okay, you don't understand. The door is closed. Right. But her stepdad and her mom fought all the time too. It was terrible. I'd hear it too. I'd be like, damn, this is awful. And so I'd be on the phone with like a couple of friends or whatever, and then I'd hear it. It's like clockwork. Maybe 30 minutes to an hour into the night, they just start fighting, and then they would stop about 1, 2, whatever, then they go to sleep. And I hated it. And especially when my dad was on another shift, like if he was working the day shift, she was on the swing shift, he'd be going to bed by the time that she'd be getting home, so there wasn't much interaction. But if he was on the graveyard shift, then he would go in at like 11 to 7. So he would be up, he would be asleep in the afternoon, and like what time she would be waking up, there might be a little brief period there. Mm-hmm. But he would wake up grumpy. He was a grouchy person when he woke up, and then they would start fighting for that little bit of period before she went to work. And that went on and on. My mom worked at HEB for a long time, the grocery store. She was a manager. And I hated them being together. Most kids would be like, oh, my parents are divorcing. I'm so broken up about it. I'm like, oh, my parents are divorcing. Yay. They're not going to have to, now I don't have to worry about them killing each other. But no, it got worse. It intensified. The war intensified. And then I became a pawn. It's like, you know, if you had Walter Cronkite narrating, you're like, your childhood becomes a battleground. You're like, dun, 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 dun. You know, just see the planes flying over. I'd be held hostage. I would. My mom would hold me hostage from my dad.
Yeah,
He'd
the
be
kid
pissed
becomes a
off
bargaining chip.
Yeah. And my mom would do this thing where she'd be like, she would set up, like, nowadays they would call it play dates. Back then it was like she would set up time for me to go hang out with my friends. She'd be like, hey, this weekend you're going to go hang out with Keith. I'm like, I am? She's like, yeah. I talked to his parents. You're going to stay the weekend over there. I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, I liked hanging out with my friends, and I miss being out in the country a lot. So I wanted to go out there and shoot guns and do whatever country people do. That's what we do. And so I'd go grab my 22 and, you know, because we had a property out there and we had a trailer, but it became like a kind of like a storage, you know, and it was just like a spooky place too. It was a real spooky place. But now here's going to lead us into tonight's story because I did that on purpose. But right down the road from there, there's a guy named Eric who I've known for years and years and years. And I'm not going to lie, Eric, we'll call him Eric W. I thought you were passed away. I'm not gonna lie. Well, no, because he used to drink all the time, man. And so somebody had told me, you remember when Jimmy B had his bar out there in Brushy?
Yeah.
I asked about Eric. Well, I'm gonna say his last name. I asked about Eric. Oh, he don't care, Eric Willem. I said, is he? And they said, no, he passed away. They were talking about his dad because I'd forgotten that his dad had his same name. Yeah, but they called his dad BB. And so I said, oh, okay. But I asked, though, I said, you talking about BB? They said, no, Bibby's all right. He's alive. It was, you know, and I could have swore they said it was Junior, but, you know, I think it was my cousin Trey told me that, which I know is probably not correct. So anyway, he gave me a creepy story from out there. And you can imagine this was going on while we were living out there. I didn't know all this. So anyway, I'd go out there and my mom would be like, hey, so I'd call my friend up, you know, back was long distance, you know, but it wasn't too expensive. The long distance back then was weird here in Texas, at least Central Texas. I don't know how it is where you're from, but if you call somebody like the next town over, it wasn't that expensive. It got more expensive the more further flung you were, farther flung, you know what I mean? And if it was in the same county, it was cheap. It was real cheap. Like it wasn't very much. It was barely a blip. But if you called like 2 counties over, 3, it became more expensive. But he was like in Milam. And so we would talk. And I called him up. I said, hey, man. And so I worked all the time. I had when I was little, I had a paper route. When I got older, I had all kinds of jobs. I cut grass all summer with Anthony's uncle. And so I said, man, my mom said, you know, come see you, whatever. And I forget that my dad had me every other weekend. Because most of the time, my dad, he would just like pick me up and he would let me go to Daniel's, you know, the guy I saw the Dogman with. You know Daniel.
Yeah, of course.
And I would just go, yeah, you know him real well. But he would just drop me off over there. And so I would just be like, well, I'm going to spend the weekend over here. But then my mom would run into me like at the Walmart, you know, and being with my little friends, the juvenile delinquents that we were. And we'd be running the street. My mom would be like, why are you not at your dad's? I'm like, I wanted to hang out at Daniel's, so I'm over here for the weekend. And my mom made a big stink about it. But she would do the same thing. She'd palm me off on somebody. Like, go play, go do whatever. And so I spent a lot of time at Anthony's mama's house. My sister lived catty corner to us, you know, for when Anthony was born.
Yeah.
And he came out looking like an insect. I've said that before.
Several times.
So weird the way he looked. Very, very weird.
Thank
you, Amy, for that donation. Captain Troll Fun. Yeah, we need it over here. If it wasn't that, it's the pig. The pig got me with the barbed wire, man. And so that's been 2-3 months ago. It wasn't his fault, though. He was nervous. Like he didn't used to being outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But then we tried to get him back in. He was like, no. Mm-hmm. And so he butted me, but he was trying to run is what it was. And how you going to catch a pig? You ain't going to catch him. You got to talk him into it. You got to give him bacon and wave it and try to get him inside. Come on now. Come on, you cannibal. Come on, you fine young cannibal. No, I'm just kidding. We'd never do that. I don't eat pork. I don't even like it being around. And so we were, you know, I called my friend up and I said, what's going on? And he goes, well, your mom called my parents and asked if you wanted, you know, said that you wanted. And so I was like, okay, because Keith had his own phone line at that time. So did I. We thought we were pimping, bro. We had our own phone lines. I said, I'll come out there, man. I'll stay because I love going out there. And his sister was, he was a little bit older than me. His sister was my age exactly. And so I liked hanging out with him and his sister. And you know, we had a lot of fun out there. And the neighbor down the road had a go-kart.
Mm.
And his older brother, who used to pick on us all the time, he made us help him do it. And finally I was like, I just said, okay, I'll help you, Chris, but you got to let me drive it. And he's like, I'll just beat you up. I'm like, okay, yeah, you'll beat me up and let me, I'll help you. so then afterwards I helped him, I was the main one that helped him. So then, he let me drive it. And so I figured one day I just, I drove off to this dude, Caffey. It was our distant cousins. The Caffeys were our cousins. I drove off to his pasture and just went out there and went to the pond and was gigging frogs, which is a terrible thing to do. But back then you shoot them, But I would catch them. I would try to catch them, like if they were close, and I'd shoot them or whatever. And my neighbor ate them. He ate the frog legs, and then his dogs would eat he would boil the frogs when they were deceased, right? Yeah. And he would eat them. We'd get like 20, 30 of them, and he'd pay us for them. He'd pay us like, I think 50 cents a frog or something like that. And it was crazy. And so, you talk about real country people, man. I'm being serious.
Yeah.
I was raised 15 years in the sticks. I showed Anthony and y'all where I used to live. We were way out there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was some country people around it. And then there was there's a little, it was supposed to be a subdivision, but it never really panned out. And it was just a little clump of country people out in the middle of nowhere. And so my dad goes out there to pick me up, and man, he was pissed. He called me over at Keith's, and he's like, why didn't you tell me you were going to Keith's? And I'm like, I'm sitting there eating hot dogs or chili dogs, whatever it was his mom had made. And I was like, I didn't know. I said, is this your weekend? He goes, yes, it's my weekend. I was like, oh, I lose track because we hardly even hang out. And he was just like, well, I drove all the way over to pick you up, and Marianne had to let me go all the way over there. I was like, well,
that's not my fault.
And I'm like, well, she sent me over here. I told the truth. I was like, she kind of sent me over here, Dad. Like, this was not, she did it on purpose. Yeah. Because she wasn't in the business. Anthony, you know this about me. Now, maybe for you, but not for me. She wasn't in the business of doing nice things.
No, she saved all that for me.
You and Christian.
Yeah.
If you did something, if it was something nice, it wasn't coming, it was by accident, or it was a strategic plan. Because like even this, I'm going to tell you the absolute truth. They went to SeaWorld. Your mama, my sister, other sister, and your dad, and my mom, and her sister. They all went to SeaWorld, and I came home and I was locked out of the house. I didn't even know they were gone. That's the kind of crap I went through. Like they didn't even take me to trips with, And there was none of this like, oh, you were bad. You misbehaved on the trip. None of that. And like, if you took me on a trip to go somewhere, dude, I would be like overjoyed. I went on a trip. One of the funnest trips I ever took was with my mom, my Thea Hova, my friend Keith, and me. We went to Six Flags in Arlington. That was the funnest trip ever, man. That was a great trip. And so I didn't misbehave when you were out there. If you got to go to a baseball game or a amusement park, you behaved like you didn't, So my mom was like, well, wait, we don't want you to misbehave. And your mom was blunt with me. She was just like, she didn't want you to go. That's all it was. She didn't want you to go. And she would do stuff like that when my dad, it was his weekend. She would do that. She would go, oh, well, we're going on a trip. Like, why are you telling me this? I can feel bad about it. So I would just play it out and be like, I don't care. I like going and not getting along with my stepmom for the weekend. That's my idea of heaven right there.
The best.
I'm gonna go up there and she's gonna do stuff to me, and my dad ain't gonna know about it, and she's gonna tell me I better not tell my dad, and then she's gonna, we're gonna fight. I love it. And when you're a kid, you get used to like getting the shaft. So you're like, everybody's calling shotgun. I'm like, backseat in the middle of my field in the hump.
Trunk.
Beat all of y'all. Backseat in the middle of my feet on the hump. That's where I like to roll, like this, uncomfortable as hell in them 1980s cars. Turning into the letter U. This is what we do. And you just deal with it. So we had this friend named Eric, and I'll be honest, he was a weird guy. Eric, we talked the other day. I'm glad you're still alive, brother. I did not know you were still alive. But we talked. So the stories that are coming out on Tuesday, we're going to do one about downtown, right? Downtown, a lot of weird stuff. I've been putting this one together, interviewing people, some people that I'd gotten these stories from years ago. And so one thing that happened recently is I started going back and looking for a notebook. And then I have a pretty strong memory, and I was like, I know what's in that notebook. So me and my brother and Scorpion all talked, and we talked for like 2 weeks. We've been talking about it. and trying to remember people's names and nicknames and stuff. And so it was this guy named Opie. That's not his name, but we called him Opie. We called him Opie Cunningham. You know, like.
No, we don't know.
Yeah. Well, okay. Opie Taylor from the Andy Griffith Show.
Ron Howard.
Ron Howard. I was going to say that. Let me finish. Jeez. Okay. And then he had, when he got older, he was on Happy Days. He was Richie Cunningham. So I call him Opie Cunningham. You know, Eddie Murphy used to say, Opie Cunningham, Opie Cunningham. You know what I'm talking about? You don't remember that either. That's Saturday Night Live. But Opie Cunningham. So Opie used to work at a club called Bob Popular downtown. The other one is still there, so I don't want to say the name of it because I don't want people, you know, but Bob Popular, I'll say the name of it because the guy that ran that club that was the head of security's name was James. He was a big dude, and he was a rapper. He used to rap. Big dude, big African-American, big black guy, big dude, good friend of mine. Awesome people. I love that place. I love the people in there. People that ran it were really cool. They had really cool bouncers, you know, and they got some fights, but they weren't like us. We were the thug club. They were like college kids, but the thugs would go in there sometimes, and they could handle themselves. But anyway, there was a guy named Opie who swears up and down he saw a vampire. And so I kept trying to remember, and I had his story mixed up with Andy Dalsik. I shouldn't say his name, but another guy. Anyway, he's not around anymore, but Andy told me a story. Guy from Chicago. And for years, I had their stories mixed up with another guy named Kirk, which is funny because Opie's real name was Curtis or Kurt, but we called him Opie. Mm-hmm. And he's like, y'all the only people call me that. And he was a big old red-haired dude, like 6'5" or something like that. He would tell me, I'm going to let you call me that. I'm going to let nobody else call me that. Because I remember one time, Brandon used to work the door at Shadow Lounge. He called him that. And him and Brandon got into a fight like that. And Brandon's like, Wolf calls you that? He goes, yeah, but I'm scared of Wolf. Well, I'm not scared of you. So it was like, yeah, I could kind of say things and do things other people couldn't do. But that's coming out this coming week. We're going to try and drop that on Tuesday. And then we'll be back tomorrow night with the people telling their encounters thing. So anyway, Eric is a guy that I've known for years. He's about 8 years older than me. I guess I'm about to be 50 next month. Unbelievable. So Eric is pushing 60. He's like 58 years old. And so Keith is a couple years older than me, and he was several years older than Keith. And I'm not going to lie, Eric was kind of creepy and scary because he lived out there and he wouldn't do anything weird because he'd let us tromp around on his property, whatever. But he was older than me. And, you know, when you're like 11 years old, dude, this dude's like 19, you know, whatever. And he lived by himself with no running water and no electricity. And his house was in the back of a pasture behind the Caffey property. And then his mom and dad were really cool. They lived at the very end of that gravel road. And they had a beautiful ranch, like a big spread, and they had 200 acres out there. And it was crazy, man. Like we would go tromping around out there, and Eric would come out, and he would give us rides and stuff. And he would, if we were going to town, like if he saw me outside, I used to throw a tennis ball against the barn like religiously. And it was weird because our house was set back, like kind of on a hill, and then our barn was further up, which was weird, I know. And we had this big shed, like it was like a glorified shed. But then we had an actual like barn because we used it for stuff, you know. But it was like a gigantic shed. Imagine like a shed in your backyard, like 3 times the size of a normal shed. Yeah. But you could fit animals in it. Let's put it that way. And so my dad would be gone all the time. I was a latchkey kid. And when you're living out in the country by yourself out there, and you got no ride or nothing. Mm-hmm. So Eric would ride up, and his brother Philip was like, I think he's like a year older than Keith. So he'd be like a senior when I was a freshman, right? And so his brother was a little bit younger than him. He was a few years younger than him, but he was a little closer to our age. And he played ball and everything. And so they would drive up, and they were nice. They didn't pick on me or beat me up, you know, like the kids on the other side. And he see me out there throwing the tennis ball. He goes, hey, we're going to go to town. You want to go? And I'd jump in the back of the truck. Yeah, man, let's go. And I'd jump in the back of the truck. And then we'd pick up Keith. Keith lived down at the bottom of the hill in a big, nice house. And so I was talking to him. And he told me something really weird. Like, and this was just like a message that came through on Instagram. And his Instagram doesn't even have his name. It's just some weird looking picture of a dog. So I didn't know who it was. And he was liking my stuff and following. I'm like, who is this guy? So I messaged him, and then the account was disabled. Then I was like, okay. And then it was, the people unactivate and
Yeah.
reactivate. He says, this is Eric. And I'm like, well, I know about 10 Erics. I'm like, Eric, who? He's like, from Rockdale. Well, I know 2 that I really was good friends with. And I said, Eric, this one or that one? And he said, that one. I said, oh my gosh. I was like, I thought he was gone. I said, dude, I was out at Brushy Creek one day, and they was having a crawfish boil, which I'm not real big on crawfish, but he said,
I love it.
I know you guys do, but it's too much work. And then he says, you do all this for a little bitty thing, a little bitty piece of meat. I'm not going to kill an animal.
Therapeutic.
You got to kill 1 million animals for that. I don't do that, man. So anyway, he messaged me and he says, hey man, he's like, a long time no see. He goes, I've been listening to your show. He says, Stephanie, that's his girlfriend. They're common law married now. He says, Stephanie likes your show. Stephanie's like closer to my age. She's only a couple years older than me. I'm like, damn. And so I was surprised that they were, I said, so she told him, she's like, yeah, he's got a channel. And he goes, there was some weird stuff that happened in here. I said, I remember, but I didn't remember like all the details. I just knew that something was out there on his property that he had said, but when you're a little kid, when you're like 11 or 12, people are always yanking your chain.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, don't be careful. Bigfoot's over there. I'm like, at the Walmart? Yep. He's eaten 3 kids already. He hangs out in the aisle where the Transformers and G.I. Joe are.
Yeah, it's easier to scare kids than just try to make them do what you want.
Exactly. Just be horrible. And so Eric's dad was always like getting on him, like, boy, don't be lying to those kids. So I thought he was full of crap. But then I was talking to another one of our neighbors that lived down the road, and that was about a year ago. And his name is Chad. And he told me, he says, man, there was some weird stuff out there. Some weird stuff that went on. He's like, but you need to talk to Eric. And I thought, oh, well, Eric's, and Chad don't live there anymore. He lives like over by Houston. And I said, I heard Eric passed away. He goes, oh, really? Well, none of us, I guess, bothered to do our due diligence and realize that he was still living, but he lives out near Caldwell now. So I said, okay. So I was talking to him. He goes, well, when I had that property out there, because, I lived on the Caffey property. I said, yeah, I remember that. And he says, dude, I saw something, 2 different things. He said, but it might've been the same thing, but it looked like a person, like a really, really thin, skinny person that you could see through.
Mm-hmm.
So he's telling me this, and I'm going like, and I've been pondering this, thinking like, what is that? So he gave me the whole thing. He typed it out. Well, his wife did, and she told me the whole story. And it's so weird. This week has been crazy. Some Uber driver gave Scorpion a story about dying and seeing stuff. And he told us that this morning. And then you and I got a story from the guy from Ford that we dropped off the vehicle to get fixed.
Yeah, you guys are telling me that story.
The USS Lexington. And the guy's name is Zach. Another Zach. Yeah. That's like the 5th Zach. So I don't know what's going on with that. What's up? Oh, thank you. So that's like the 5th Zach that we got a story from. So Eric's story, though, was really bizarre. And I read it. And, I've been really busy this week. We haven't had shows. You've seen we've been real busy. And I said, man, this is a weird story, And so I had his number and I called him and I said, hey, man, I said, you busy? He said, nope. Retired, he retired. He was working the oil fields. And he retired. Well, he hurt his leg. And they paid him well, and they kind of paid him to retire, which is cool. I mean, so he worked in the oil fields for years, man. He says, it's crazy. He's like, he goes, when I was young, he goes, and I lived out there. He goes, I didn't believe in nothing. He goes, I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in the devil. He's like, I didn't believe in anything. He said, I was so atheistic, He goes, and now I go to church all the time. Thank goodness I'm with my wife, Stephanie. I knew her from school. And he's like, he goes, I was an alcoholic. That's what he told me. But he said, I'd been drinking for years. And he said that he basically had gone into the hospital and he had went into a coma from alcohol poisoning. And they thought he was going to die. And they intubated him and all this other stuff. Stephanie was the nurse. And they hit it off because even though he was up here, or he was in, I I think he was out in Bryan. I think, I'm not 100%, but I think that's where he was at, or Temple, one of them two. But he was at Baylor. And she was just like, I'm from Rockdale, you know, so they hit it off. And she was a God-fearing person, so she would read the Bible to him. And I said, well, how did that come about? He goes, well, she thought I was handsome. I said, that can't be it. I don't think that's the case. But Eric was like, when he was 19, he was going bald on top.
No.
You know, yeah, he won the reddish blonde hair, picket fence teeth. And by his own admission, like he teases.
Yeah.
Like he'll make fun of himself. Trust me, this is him. He always does that.
At least he's not insecure about
But
it.
he is like muscular. Like, I mean, when we were young, his arms were like my two legs.
Yeah.
And he helped me with strength. He was one of the first people that taught me about strength training because he had a weight set out there, that god awful wooden structure he called a house. He said, you guys got to lift weights, because his brother was a really good ball player. And his brother went to play, I think, junior college. I can't remember. And he got hurt. But I remember him having this big old weight set out there. And that was the first time in my life I'd ever lifted a weight. The second time was with my sister's boyfriend, Gary Sanchez. Shout out to him. He's in my book. And he really refined it and taught me how to lift. So by the time I came to Austin, I knew how to lift. But it's like boxing, you know. I knew how to throw a punch. I knew how to take one. I didn't know how to do footwork. I don't know any of that stuff. But, you know, it's a process.
Mm-hmm.
But shout out to Eric for that. So he told us, you know, and he would tell us these creepy stories, man, like ghosts and stuff. But when I was a kid, I wasn't really interested in that. I was like, yeah. And he's like, I want to tell you a story. I'd be like, yeah, I'd like you not to. I really don't. I don't really want to hear this. I stay at my house all the time by myself, you know. And he goes, so do I. I'm like, you're a giant, dude. You're a giant man. Like, you're a grown. To me, he was old, you know, 19.
Yeah.
You're like 12 or something, you know. You're a giant man. Nobody's gonna be. He's like, oh, there's stuff out here. It's real scary. And he was the one that scared me about Bigfoot out there. So when I was walking my bike home, I've told this on people's shows before. I think I even told it on Marzulli and maybe a few other people's, like Merkel's or somebody. I was walking my bike and I remember hearing that noise, like coming from the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like the cows, and I knew cows, man. I've been around them my whole life since I was a baby. I said, all them cows is over there. Why are they all bunched up like that?
Yeah.
And I heard this noise and I'm like, I saw a shadow like move, but I didn't think it was anything because I thought it was too wide. Knowing now what I know about Sasquatch, you know, it's like, that's what it is. You know, it's this big 4 foot, 5 foot wide thing. And you're thinking, oh, that's too big to be. That's not a person. So I kind of got, when I saw the shadow, I thought kind of scary, but then it kind of gave me like a little bit of weird relief. Cause then I thought, oh, well, that can't be, you know, it's too small. I mean, it's too big.
Yeah.
I thought Bigfoot was like a tall man, like Chewbacca. I mean, you know, you're a kid. Yeah. You don't know. And so you're just like, oh, that's not Bigfoot. He's walking by.
I don't know what it is, but it's not Bigfoot.
And then that guy, his name was Palmer. And I remember he was the guy that worked that were his cows on that other guy's the property. Mm-hmm. He came on, they knocked on the door, and he had them glasses, and he had a chaw on one side of his mouth. And he's like, Mr. Turner, I done lost 2 cows over this weekend. Something predator. He's in the neighborhood. It's pretty bad. And my dad says, really? He says, yeah, I got some pictures of him. He showed my dad, goes, golly. Like, I didn't see it. And my dad goes, no, don't, you know. And he's like, yeah, well, we got some cows out there. You know, he talked and barely understand the guy. So I was riding my bike down there, and he stops me. He goes, you're locking up the gates. He goes, you boys, you stay out this pasture for a while. I usually we let you go, or you can shoot your guns, wherever. There's something out here. And I'm like, what did you say?
He's Boomhauer.
I'm like, I couldn't understand him. I'm like, did I win the publisher's clearing? What are you talking about? And this guy,
don't go down that field,
that named old cat out there on Bigfoot or someone just going to pull his head off. You know what I'm saying? And so I told him, I said, man, what are you talking about? He's like, there's a predator? And he says, yeah, he probably some guy. I don't know, man. Well, you know, it ain't coyote, so I can tell you that. And I was like, so I told Keith, I said, dude, do you think there's a monster out here or something? Something happened. I was like, that's weird because Friday night, you know, I saw something in the pasture. And Keith's like, I guess it's Bigfoot, right? He made a joke. We're over there at Eric's the next week, and he tells me that he had seen Bigfoot out there. Like I, kid you not. And so it was interesting that his wife has been watching my show for about 2 years and finally reached out to me. I mean, she didn't just reach out to me. It's been a process, but I've been planning on telling this story for a while. And I was going to tell Rudy's story tonight, going back from to finish up with these guys that have gone through in the Ozarks in the Arkansas border with Missouri. But I still got some more work to do with that because I got to talk to him again. Rudy is a native tracker. And he's got a lot of stuff. So I was like, oh, okay. He started dumping stuff on me this morning. And I said, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do that one. I said, we got to talk again. But, so me and Eric talked. And I said, hey, man, I'd like to tell your tales here. And he says, sure. And we got together. But I told him about that old guy, too. I said, you remember that guy? And he goes, yeah, I couldn't understand. I said, I never could understand when we started laughing. I know I wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
I never voiced it. I never asked Keith or Chris if they could understand because I don't think they could either. And then my friend Dennis, he'd come out there and, it was just, that guy was weird. But he'd come driving up there and be like, you guys, be careful. Like a G.I. Joe, one of those PSAs.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mumbly. You're like, okay. And he drives away, and then you're just like, I have no idea what he just said.
Quite the scholar.
Let's just keep shooting our guns and hope that it wasn't, don't shoot your gun, because I didn't understand you. But the people that own that land, they were real cool too. I'd see them once in a blue moon. They'd be out there and they if that guy was not around to feed his cows, because they had their cows separated, but I saw that dude all the time feeding them. And I think the deal was he would feed his cows and feed theirs. And that was for them to because a lot of people, they'll put their cows on somebody else's land. And so, yeah, that's what's going on. And Eric told me, he says, dude, you're living out here in this, I called it, even as a kid, I was a smart mouth. I called it a structure. I said, you live in a structure. And he's like, you're a little smart ass. He's like, this is a house. He goes, I built it. I said, I can see that. Where do you take a douche? He said, in the other house, there's a little outhouse. I said, you poop in that. This is back in the 80s.
Uh-huh.
So me and my friends were like, you poop in that house back there? He's like, yep. And I said, man, you're retarded, dude. I literally just didn't say that, but I thought it. And his brother was like, yeah, I stay with my mom and dad. He comes and stays out here because he don't want to follow rules. Well, his thing was he wanted to go run around with his car. But it was interesting because he was a young guy, but he had 2 vehicles. Because he would take off and he would work in the oil fields, and then he would come back for a couple months, and then he'd be gone again. He'd come back for a couple months. And so he had a Mustang, like an older one, like a nice one that he restored himself, and he had a big old dually. So he had money, but I was like, why don't you buy a house? He's like, where at? In town?
For what?
With all them goofballs and goober heads? And I was like, yeah, it's much better to live out here and poop
A dog shack.
in a shack.
Damn right.
Behind your
I
structure.
have a house. Look at this beautiful.
It was like 2 rooms. So we were joking and laughing about that today. We were just like, dude, your house was not good. Yeah, not a good structure, whatever. But he saw something out there when he was driving one time out into Bryan College Station area, and he said, dude, I saw Bigfoot. He goes, and I'm not joking, he goes, it was carrying what looked like a dead hog. And he said it ran alongside his truck for like about 100 feet, and then it veered off into a pasture and jumped without even moving its arms, holding a big 200-pound hog, and it jumped over a fence and ran. He goes, I saw it. And we're lifting weights, right? He's helping me lift weights, whatever. And I'm like, you saw Bigfoot carrying a hog and jump a fence? And he said, yes. I said, if you believe in that, why are you living in the middle of out here, dude?
Yeah.
Why are we out here? Like, you just scared the crap out of me. I'm a kid, dude.
It's a pretty good argument to live in town.
Yeah. So then he finally got a generator, and so he got broken into. But it was like, you're broken into out there. It's kind of like who did it. So the cops come out there, and they're like, who do you suspect broke into your house? And you're like, it was Phil. you know, go get him. He just, you know, he lives right there.
There's only 13 people in the whole county.
He's literally wearing my necklace. Now it's at the pawn shop, but he was wearing it yesterday.
He went to elementary school with him. Go get him.
He's the dope head. You know, so it was a guy that lived up the road. It was the one that his pit bulls attacked my dad's dog.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I said my dad's dog. My dad had a dog and I had 2 dogs. Technically his dog, my dog, whatever, but it didn't matter. But my border collie got tore up, and so did my dad's dog, and we were upset. And so my dad got onto these dudes, man. And I'm telling you, they were like redneck hillbilly from like some Carolina or some shit. They weren't from here. They weren't like native Texans, so everybody was real suspicious of them.
Yeah.
But they had something going on with their sister, who sometimes people in town said that they would see them holding hands, and I was like, "This is sister." So yeah, I'm not even joking.
They're what
man.
foreigners expect rednecks to look.
They were like foreign rednecks. It was weird. You were just like, "Who are these people, man?" And so when they attacked our dogs, it was on and popping. So we were pretty sure they did it. So what happened was, always the entrepreneur, even as a kid, you know, because I had to pay for my own stuff sometimes, you know, because my dad would be paying child support my mother, and she would just keep it, and I'd be living with him.
Mm-hmm.
It was horrible. She did crap like that, you know. So it was bad. So, you know, I wanted something extra. Usually my dad would get it, but not always, you know. And if I wanted certain, like, you know, comic books or whatever, you might be on your own. So Eric told me, hey, you know, he goes, it was summertime and it was hot as hell. He goes, can you watch my house? And I'm like, I ain't staying up in there, man. I was like, I seen a spider that was big enough to carry me off. I'm not, no way. I'm not.
One of them Jumanji spiders.
He's like, you scared of spiders? And me and my friends were like, yeah. He's like, y'all some scary little bastards. I'm like, we are. We're not going to stay up in that house. I said, I'll tell you what. I'll check it 2 or 3 times a day. I'm sitting out here doing nothing all summer. He goes, well, I'm going to be gone for like 2 or 3 weeks. I'll let you know exactly how long tomorrow. So he comes back and he tells me, he's like, yep, it's going to be about 3 weeks. So I need you to watch the house. So he goes, I have some dogs out here that need to be fed and watered every day. And people out in the country, man, back then in the 80s especially, the dog wasn't like inside. Mm-hmm. The dog just sat there outside in the heat going and tried not to die of heartworms.
Yeah.
You know, it was bad. So I had to go out there, and his dog, Lucy, I remember her. And I'd go out there as a lab, and he had this other dog that was just running around the neighborhood impregnating the other dogs. I'm not even joking.
Yeah.
It was like a black and brown, like kind of coon dog.
Mm-hmm.
It was a coon dog mixed with a Rottie. Yeah. And the dog it got my dog pregnant. I know. I had a Beagle Spitz, and he got her pregnant, and the puppies were as big as her. But by the grace of God, I prayed over it that night, and she had them.
Yeah, I was gonna
say. My dad was like, the next day we were going to have to get the puppies removed or whatever, and because she could die, but then she had them. So I ended up watching his place, and so one night I was out there, and I don't remember what I was doing. The side of his house had like a perfect ricochet, and so I was practicing pitching. And I would take my tennis ball, which was kind of like a weighted tennis. I made it. Like I put like cork in it, you know, kind of like drilled it a little. It's a whole thing. But anyway, I threw it and it would bounce, you know, but I made it heavy, you know. And so I thought, man, this side of his house is, you know, I can throw this ball. So I was sitting there throwing this ball, and there was like a tree right over the house, like an oak tree. Mm-hmm. So I was in the shade, and I thought, you know, I'm going to throw the ball for a while until the sun gets, you know, on the other side of us, you know. Because I had animals to feed and water too. I couldn't be down there the whole time, but my dogs would go with me. They'd play with his dogs. They got along, except that I can't remember. General was his name. That was the dog's name, General. He went around he was amorous. So that dog wasn't hardly ever around. So I had my dogs down there. They were all playing whatever, and I felt bad for him, you know. And so I went inside of his house and snooped around. Wasn't much in there. He had some magazines with articles in them.
Oh, right. Yes, the article magazine.
But I was like, dude, this ain't me. You know, I don't want to be, you know, I was very puritanical as a child. I didn't like that stuff. I was like, oh no, I'm not going to look at, you know, boobies.
He's just into fiction.
Ew, gross.
Like, ew, gross.
Role play
Can't
articles.
be looking at things like that, you know?
Yeah.
But it was crazy, man. So I was out there and I would throw my tennis ball, and then like I threw the tennis ball one time, and I remember like hearing like, and this is true, man. I'm not even joking. And I fielded it. You know, I'd practice fielding and all that. And because I always play baseball, you know, like every year. And I remember hearing like the knock come back from it, and I was like, what was that? And that was the only thing I did that whole summer was just go to my baseball games. You know what I mean? And so, like, if I wasn't playing baseball, I was at home, you know, or I would hang out with my friends that were not on vacation or whatever. And my dad would work, and then sometimes we'd go out. But that week, I told my dad, I said, I have to go and take care of Eric's house every day. So we went out there a couple times. My dad drove me because my dad had his long weekend, which he would get every other week, and then he would get 2 days off a week. And then sometimes he would just work a lot of overtime. And eventually, my dad got to where he trusted me enough that he'd leave the truck. He had 2 vehicles. He'd leave me one of the trucks, and I would drive it down there. You know, I mean, my dad said, you got a big head. And, you know, and my grandpa told him the same thing. He had a big head. They're going to think you an adult.
Yeah.
They didn't. They just look little, fat little, because I had a baby face. My dad didn't have that baby face. And driving down the road, you know, and I'm like this, you know, you're like 11 years old. You're driving an S10. So I didn't have the truck that day. I just had my bike. And so it got dark. Wasn't paying attention. And there was no electricity out there. He had the generator, but I had to get gas for it. And I had to get my dad to bother my dad to give him gas. So I just was thinking about getting paid. He was going to pay me well. Get this. He was going to give me $300. $300. You're talking like 1986.
Yeah, that's
right.
11-year-old kid. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, and it's summertime, and like I didn't have no way to go do paper route or cut grass because I was living out in the country that summer. Because my parents were always back and forth, so I would be living who knows where I was going to live from one year to the next. It was a different place all the time. So that summer though, I was out there, and I remember it was hot as hell. I might have been 10. No, I think I was might have been 10 going on 11. I think I turned 11 that summer. But I ended up like, you know, throwing the ball, and it got late, and I remember hearing a knocking, and then I heard a shriek come from the back of the woods. Now, his house was about 30, 40 yards from the tree line, which is where the woods were. And I could swear I would hear things and see things in those woods. And I kind of blocked that in my mind, you know, but talking about it today, it kind of made me remember a few things that I had kind of like thought maybe I was tripping. I don't count it as like experiences, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But him talking about it made me remember like some of the things that he was talking about. Like he said, man, that place was haunted. He's like, not really the house itself, but that land out there. And we'd find arrowheads and things like that out there. And you'd be like, what is this? You know, like, is this the land is haunted or what is it? You know, and there was a creek back in the back there where I found like a lot of arrowheads. So there was an encampment at one time there. It had to be. And I'm pretty sure they were the Apache that had been pushed out by the Comanches. And so I remember being out there and hearing these noises that I thought, well, I'm just going to, you know, you kind of put it out of your mind, and it was getting dark, and I was like, oh crap. And I lived about a couple miles up, well, no, not a couple miles, probably about a mile and a half up the road. So I had to get on my bike and ride to the fence, which is like about 150 yards, you know, just back, because it's tucked back up in there, undo the fence, put it back, and then ride my bike up a hill on the gravel road. So it's easier just to walk your bike. And I remember hearing like something growling at me from the woods, and my dogs were growling back at it, and I didn't see what it was. Well, he said that there was this thing that would come up to his house, his shack, as he would, and it would growl. But he said one day he looked out the window and he caught what it was. He said it was not a normal thing, like everyday thing. It wasn't like a normal, like everyday thing. But sometimes he would hear this growl, and he would look out the window and he wouldn't see anything. And then one day he did. What he saw was this gaunt, thin, pale white thing. And it was night, and it was so, but it was the moonlight. It was shining like from the moonlight. And what Eric told me, he says, man, he says, I'm going to tell you like this, man. And he called me Josh because he didn't really call, he didn't know me as Wolf. But he says, Josh, I'm going to tell you like this, man. He's like, I saw, it was long haired like a woman. He's like, it didn't have any hair on its body other than the scraggly hair, and it was nude. And you could kind of see like breasts. But he goes, this thing looked like if you took a person and fed it, his exact words, if you took a person and fed it crack and meth for like, years and just gave it no food and it was just malnourished. He's like, and it was just hairless and you could see through the skin because the skin was so thin and white and pale. And you could see like the organs and the bones. Like it was like if you x-rayed a person is what he said.
Yeah.
And that's what he said he saw. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, dude, really? He goes, and then it opened its mouth and it had all these weird looking, jaggedy looking teeth. I said, like, and he says, kind of like a jack-o'-lantern. Like there were like gaps, but the teeth, there was like one pointy one right in the middle was like a triangle, like a shark's tooth. And the way he described it, he said, dude, he went deep sea fishing and he caught a shark one time, like a sand tiger. And he said the teeth were kind of like that. And for years, I kind of was like, maybe that's, kind of how it looked. He goes, but then I was just watching Shark Week one time. He goes, and that great white has that triangular tooth. He goes, that's kind of what it looked like. But the other ones kind of looked like the teeth from those, that sand tiger. And he says, we ended up catching it. We were like right up by a sandbar. He goes, when I caught that shark, he goes, and I had the teeth and I have them still. And so he said the teeth looked like that. He's like, have you ever heard of anything like that? And he goes, and it was growling like a dog. And ultimately, he had a smaller dog. I don't know what kind of dog it was. Not it wasn't that dog that was always running around impregnating everything, and it wasn't Lucy. She would stay inside with him. But he got this other dog, and I couldn't have it in the house because it would poop and pee. But I wouldn't leave my dog outside anymore because I thought it was a coyote or something was out there growling. He said, and I saw what it was. He goes, and it was literally this pale humanoid looking thing. And it's what he told me. He told me that today. And he says, dude, and I'll never forget. So the Colemans lived on the other side over there. And I remember one of them was probably about his age. And it was his buddy, and I couldn't remember his name, but he told me today. And so that dude's nickname was Spanky. I remember that. Yeah, dude. The old timers called him Spanky, from the Little Rascals.
Yeah.
Because if you think about it, he kind of looked like it. And so Eric goes, you remember Spanky? And I said, yeah. And I was like, you're talking about the Colemans. So, he started reminiscing about the people that lived out there, right? And I said, you're talking about, his name was Taylor. And he's like, yeah, Taylor. That was the son. But Coleman his dad was his stepdad. But he was mean to him. He was real mean to him. And that was Eric's friend. He said, you remember I used to hang out with him and sometimes we'd work on tractors and things like that. And I said, yeah, I remember. Because sometimes you'd have a tractor and they'd be cussing and, doing whatever they were doing. And he said, dude, I was sitting there working on a tractor with him one time. He's like, and Spanky, he goes, just tells me out of the blue. He says, dude, there's a demon that runs around out here. He said, I stopped. He goes, and I was going to start saying, yeah. And then he goes, I stopped and I thought about it. He said, but Spanky would lie. He'd say all kind of dumb, crazy stuff. He'd be like, yeah. He claimed he was with all these women and they weren't, never happened. You know what I mean? And then the rumor would spread and then they'd be like, well, he's lying. That never happened. Taylor's just saying things. He's not being, he's a liar. So he said, dude, I told him, I said, I didn't want to just say anything. I'd blurt it out because then he might just say, I said, I know what you're saying. He's going to play off of what you're saying. And he's going to, because he was that kind of guy. I didn't know him that well, but I've been around him a few times and he was kind of thrown off. But I mean, he's gone now. So I want to talk about people that aren't around, but, and I can't remember his last name, but his dad his last name was Coleman. I remember that, but his stepdad was real mean to him. Didn't like him, and maybe for good reason because he was weird. He was weird, but he seemed harmless. I mean, I don't think he was he didn't seem like a groper. You know what I mean? Like somebody who would be like, hey, he didn't seem like that to me, but he just seemed weird, So I remember him telling me this. He says, Spanky looked at me and he goes, we're working on a tractor. He goes, I seen this thing. I thought it was a woman walking along the road. He's like, and then it just veered off and went into the pasture and took off running real fast. He's like, and then when it got toward the tree line, it spun around real quick and looked at me and then ran backwards into the woods.
Staring at him the whole time?
Yeah. And I'm sitting there, and so Eric was like, man, what the hell was that? You know, and he's like, Spanky was like, he looking at me, he goes, I know you're looking at me like you don't believe me. He's like, and I know I lie. He's like, but I'm telling the truth about this, Eric. And Eric is like, I don't believe you. So he just let him, you know, he let him go for, I said, but you'd already seen this creature. And he says, yeah, I saw it, but I wanted to know more. He goes, well, my brother, because he knew Spanky would try to get, you know, he'd go deeper. He's like, my brother saw it. He goes, okay, now we're talking. He's like, your brother's got morals. He's like, and his brother's name was, I think his brother's name was Jerry Don. Jerry Don, I think was his name. And he said, Jerry. So he called him up. He said, Jerry. He says, hey, Spanks told me some crazy story. You know, he saw some, he goes, oh yeah. He goes, that creature. He said, that's a true story. He's like, he's not lying about that. He lies all the time. He's lying about all these women he'd been with and all this stuff, going into these beer joints and saying stupid things, getting beat up. But Jerry Don, he was like, no, that's true. That's true. And he says, you know why? He goes, because I saw this thing. It was laying down in our driveway after we had come back from Corpus Christi down in Port Aransas. We come from the coast. And he goes, and we were coming back, and he goes, and me and my girlfriend, we see this thing. And it gets up and it crawls away on all fours. And he was like, and so when he told me that, that's when I said, okay, back up. I said, wait a minute. I said, so Jerry Don that lived over there on the other side, it was, you know, it's probably about a quarter mile across the woods. I said, he saw it. And he says, yeah, he saw it. Even better, he said he could get him to talk to me. He goes, I still talk to him. He's like, he lives on the other side of Lano. I said, okay, or Milano. And I said, okay. So I'm supposed to talk to him. I'm going to get his story because he said he's got a couple different things. And he saw something very similar on the other side of where he lives, on the other side of that property. And that's interesting because literally there was a thread that I saw on, it was either a Facebook group or it was somewhere. And I'm trying to remember, and there were these two guys out near Caldwell that saw something that looked like this, kind of similar, but not quite. And so when I asked him, I said, did you ever see this creature again? He says, oh yeah, I saw it 2 more times. He's like, after I talked to Jerry, I said, man, this is something, this is legit. I think this is real. He says, so I was out there and I had this, you know, I have, you know, my goofy coon dog, my hound dog. He's like, and we're out in the woods, you know, and he goes, and and I'm hunting. It's dove season. And there's a bunch of dove out there, you know. He goes, and I had a couple of my friends with me, and we were drinking beer, you know, because for some reason, people where I'm from, all the way out there from here to East Texas, that's just kind of what you do. You take guns and you wander around out in the woods and you shoot at animals while drunk.
Pretty much.
Now you don't hear a lot about that during like deer season. They're not drinking while they're hunting the deer, but after they get whatever they're going to get the night, everybody gets drunk. That just seems like what they do. And then they're trying to be sober the next day, and they're like, "I don't drink while I'm hunting." Yes, you do. Don't be lying. Don't be saying you don't. But they were literally out there dove hunting. He said we were out there swilling some beer. You know, my words. He didn't say swilling. But he goes, and we hear this crashing through the brush. He goes, and my friend's like, look. And he goes, and they point, and he is just I forgot the guy's name, like Dustin or something. I don't know the guy. And he said he pointed. He said, and we see this thing like leaned over like a log. He's like, but this thing didn't have hair. It was just like a bald creature with a yellowish kind of an appearance, but the same premise. It had like this kind of see-through skin. And he said that it looked like, he said his friend told him, it looked like Gollum, like years later. You know, he goes, I was watching that Lord of the Rings movie. He goes, and I thought, man, that's what it looked like, but more thin. You could see through the skin of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, this one was distinctly different. I said, so you didn't see the other one? He said, no, I saw that one again on another night. He said, I hear this like screeching noise, what I thought was like an owl dying. He's like, and I go outside on my porch and I see right there in the front of my property, I see this creature. And he goes, it's like squatted down, kind of hopping, like, you know, he said bouncing. I don't know if that's, you know, But then it stands up. And when it stands up, he goes, I see it in the eyes are like orange. I didn't notice that before. He didn't see that before. He says, and I see it, and it looks like a see-through creature. You can see the bones. You can see the organs. He goes, it's like, what is this thing? He's like, and I walked out with my weapon pointed right at it. He goes, I had a rifle, I was pointing right at it. And he said it was like a deer rifle, whatever. And he said that he talked to this thing. He told it, you need to get off my property. He goes, and I realized I'm not talking to a human being. He's like, and this thing was just like going with its jaws snapping back and forth. He goes, and then he goes, I saw the jaw elongate, kind of go like it popped out, was going up and down.
Like unhinged.
And he said it was doing this with its hands, like, and then touching its fingers together, which were like claws. He's like, he goes, I was scared poopless. Trying not to cuss. That's my goal. Hopefully it'll work. But he said, yeah, he goes, I was sitting there and I was looking at this thing. He goes, and then I told it, get off my property. He's like, so I fired a shot over its head, and then it kind of did that, and then just kind of kept waving back and forth. Like it wasn't scared. Like the initial, like it startled it or whatever. He goes, and then it just started kind of backing up, walking backwards. And then he goes, this is the weird thing. He goes, it kind of flipped backwards and then crawled like that.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we've heard,
we've heard that many times from these crawlers.
These stories before, you're saying
where they just flip around. Their bodies are kind of
like the most limber crackhead you've ever seen.
Yeah.
It's just like, well, I've seen that downtown in Austin a few times. But it just when somebody tells you that, though, I mean, you're just sitting there going like, crap, man. I mean, just hope you don't run into it, And so when I told him this, I said, "Now I got to ask the $1 million question." I said, Eric, when I was a kid and you hired me to watch your house, I was like, had you already seen this thing? And he goes, no. I said, oh, okay, thank goodness. So you actually gave a shit. You didn't see me. He goes, no. He goes, after that, he goes, remember I told you guys not to be coming back out there, not to be going out there. And I was like, I don't remember that. He's like, nah, because you guys quit coming out there, because I was like, hey, man, there's something out here. So I started thinking about it, and I do remember him telling a couple of my friends that I ran around with out there, hey, there's something out there. So Chris and Keith were like, oh, yeah, you know what? There's something out there. Let's not go hang out at Eric's place. And his brother, who's a little closer to our age, said that there was something out there. Now, what happened to Philip, he was in his house.
Mm-hmm.
He wants me to call it a house. I will call it a house.
His domicile.
He's like, you were always calling it. He called me football head. Must be something to that, because some kids when I was little called me that too. Huh?
Did you used to look like Stewie Griffin?
Well, I mean, I guess I have like a four-cornered head. It's a normal head. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to have that, except I have like a skull fracture, right here.
I don't think you have like an oblong football head.
I think you have like a weird head.
I think it's a cowlick too in the back.
It's more like a basketball head.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, because people when I cut my hair like real short, they said I had a football head.
Well, that worries me because our hat sizes I found out yesterday, pretty similar.
Your head is huge.
I never thought that.
Well, yeah, it is.
Well,
okay.
Huh.
All right. So anyways, he told me though, he's like, you were always making wisecracks and talking, smack or whatever. He goes, you look at it and smack you. He goes, you're a little smart ass. And I said, I just want to get to the bottom of stuff. I knew you were full of crap. You were always saying stupid crap. He's like, yeah, that was Spanky. I said, no, you did it too. I was like, you would try to trick me, man. You'd always say crazy things. And I remember one time we heard something, turned out it was a bobcat out in the woods. And he tried to tell me that he had seen a monster out there, like he was scaring us, right? And I said, that's why I didn't believe you.
Well, they can sound like monsters.
And then he had us help him paint his house. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I told him, I said, you got any work, man? Because I was like going to cut the grass. Well, he lived in the pasture. Like, what are you going to cut grass? You cut it around, I guess, and cut it around. So I said, I'll bring my push mower down here and I'll cut your grass. He's like, well, there's like 100 acres there. was like, I'll cut an acre. I'm not gonna. What do you want me to do? He goes, all the way to the fence line. I said, no way. It's like hundreds of yards. He goes, well, then paint my house brown. I said, it's already brown. So he wanted me to paint his house, and then when I went to go into town to get the paint, he told me, "Nah, don't worry about it. I'm just kidding with you." I said, "Dude, I'm sorry. It's like, I'm not gonna go cut, like, you know." So he was pretty cool though. Like, he was like, "Here's $20." And you know, $20 as a kid that back in the '80s, that was a lot. He'd come back from the oil fields and he'd just be like, "Here's $20, man. Go get yourself some toys or whatever you kids do." Mm-hmm. And so he would pick on his brother too, man. His brother was real laid back. His brother was cool. When his brother got his license, he would take us into town and stuff like that. And I would go out there to hang out with my one friend, and we would wander around out there in that area. And they would be out there running around doing stuff. And I remember one time they were shooting guns. And it was the first time in my life I had ever shot an AK-47. Oh, man. And I guess I was 15. And I went out there and I was like, what is this? And he's like, this is contraband. And this is, it was like, and I think at that time you weren't supposed to have them, but he did, because he worked out on these oil rigs and so he was working out on the oil rig, like offshore, and they traded with these people and he got these guns. And so he ended up like just going back to the shore, and he drove back home and he just had it. And he had the gun. It was like, he didn't have it shipped or anything. And I said, where'd you get? He goes, from some foreigners. And so we were shooting the guns out there and we had a lot of fun. But I remember being out there and we would just be talking and we'd be sitting on the porch or something. And you would get this feeling of dread, like this foreboding feeling. And another thing that he said he saw one time, he said he was out there in his back porch one time. He goes, he liked to whittle, but not just sitting there for the sake of doing it. He would actually like carve little stuff. He goes, I still do that to this day. He goes, I got arthritis in my hands. I still carve. And he said he would sit out there and he was carving one day and he was on the back porch chewing tobacco because everybody out there was addicted to nicotine, including me. I was dipping stuff off and on for years, even as a kid. And so I'd run around all summer dipping. And then but my coach ratted me out. Oh. My little league coach, he was like, yo, you want to tell your dad you're supposed to be doing that. Whoa. And they always have a story. My brother's whole face exploded from that. Yeah. And you're like, why don't I ever see these people? They're on TV. You haven't seen it? Your brother's on TV? No, he's dead. But there's people on TV doing it. Your brother died from dipping? No, he got eaten by a shark. But still, same principle.
But that shark died from his dip.
The shark got cancer in his mouth from him. Killed an innocent shark. So the shark didn't get him the cancer. What? A manta ray ate all of them. Well, I don't think that's true. You're a little bastard. I'm going to tell. That's pretty much all it was. You're going to get in trouble. You're a little bastard. Little bastards don't get away with anything. You're going to get in trouble. So that's it, So my dad got on to me. He says, are you dipping? And I did. And my dad spanked me. And so, I'm supposed to be dipping stuff. And then by the time I was 15, 16, I was dipping again. And my dad just gave up. So do what you got to do. But you're going to lose all your teeth. And then you're going to not know how to spell. And that was.
Yes, that's how it happens.
That's what happens. It makes you stupid. My dad told me, he goes, you ever seen a smart person that dips snuff? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, they're not smart. They're stupid. So my dad, he was business manager of the union at one time. The guy his name was Evans. I remember his first name. My dad just called him Evans. Tall, skinny guy. Dip snuff. And my dad would take me to the union hall with him sometimes, and I'd play outside, run around, catching grasshoppers mostly in the summertime because I had pets that I would catch and I would feed them grasshoppers and stuff like that. And my dad was like, you're not out there, going around. Don't be going too far. There's a highway. And the highway was like, at that time, you know how the highway is now. It's they've made it bigger. It was 2 lanes. Yeah. It was far. Like I wasn't going to run around and play out by the highway. So he would get on to me and I'd get tired of like being out there in the heat. So I'd go inside. I'd be sitting there and my dad's the vice president, whatever, he would come in. And I told him, I said, you're stupid. Man. I'm like 9 years old, this guy's like, what are you talking about? And I said, my dad said people that dip snuff are stupid and they're ignorant rednecks. And he just like, okay. And then we get in the truck and my dad's like, we're going to town to get something to eat. We get on the highway and he goes, "You ignorant little son of a bitch. Why did you tell Evans that?" I said, "That's what you said." He goes, "Why do you always repeat what I say? You know I don't know what the hell I'm talking about." Let's go get some fried chicken. What's wrong with you? Let's talk to adults like that. Whatever.
You should know better than to listen to me. I'm your father.
You know, I'm full of shit.
Yeah.
You know how crotchety I am and how angry I'll become? So we end up out in the middle of the sticks, right? And so we're out there, and I remember Eric down there at the bottom of the hill and him telling me, "Hey, there's something out here." Years later, I thought about it, and I thought, man, I wonder how many times I might have came in close proximity to one of these things. I never saw it out there. I never saw anything out there. I heard stuff. Now, there was a trail that ran from my house to Keith's house. I know both of y'all have heard him talk about that. And he goes, it would suck. Remember, he was talking, we were at the gun range, and he was like, you run into like spider webs and stuff, and you're walking, and he's like, dude, it was horrible. You'd run into like a banana spider, and you'd look around, you go back to the house, you take your shirt off, and it's crawling around on you. I'm not even joking, man. It was horrible.
I was carrying a stick just in front of me the whole time.
I did. I had my mom gave me this, she went to like a yard sale, and she bought me this big like hickory cane. And my dad was like, "That belonged to a Yankee." And I'm like, "How do you know?" He goes, "Because it's hickory. We ain't got none of that shit down here." And I said, "So that's where my dad told me that." He goes, "Yankees have that. That's a Yankees person's stick." He goes, "It's probably possessed." He didn't believe in none of this. I told my dad, I was like, "Really?" He goes, Yeah. It's probably an old man following you around. I was looking behind me everywhere I went. I was like,
the demon stick.
So something was weird though, because I think it was in my mind, because I would like walk down the trail and I'd be like using it to swat down the spider webs, and I would hear something behind me. So I told my friend Keith, and Keith's like, "You know, your dad and your grandpa just like to say shit like my dad, and you know, they just like to say stuff. Don't believe them. Why do you believe in them?" I was a little bit younger than him, and I looked up to Keith back then. Big stupid thing to look up to Keith. But I thought he was, Keith's smart, man. He's a couple years older than me, man. He's got,
he's got it all figured out.
That experience, And so he was just like, he'd be playing Nintendo. You know how he is. He don't even look at you when he talks. He's just like, yeah, ghost. He's like, "You'd already be dead." I'm like, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah, because everybody knows ghosts will eat you." And I'm like, he based this on his experience with Pac-Man. Because we had a big argument. He says, "Hey," him and his cousins, Sean, they were there, and Sean and John, they were twins. And his one cousin says, "Why do you think ghosts eat people?" Because we were outside talking, right? And we go inside and we started messing with him. I was like, "Why do you think ghosts eat people?" He goes, "It's Pac-Man, dude. They make the ghosts because they're monsters. They eat people." And we just started laughing, and we were like, "That's your reason?" He's like, "Look, I'm older than you guys by almost 3 years. Who do you believe?" And I'm like, "Not you. You're still a kid."
They only eat people with big yellow heads and beady eyes.
Yeah. He said Pac-Man was based on, this is what he told me. I'm not even joking. Where he came up with this, I don't know. He said Pac-Man was based on a science experiment by the military. And that was an actual man that was running around eating food. And that the power pellets in the corners of the screen were for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? Mm-hmm. And those were snacks, the little, and the ghosts were actually monsters that would physically eat people. That's what he told me. And so, you don't believe it, but when you're like 10, 11 years old, you kind of think, well, what if it's true? So we had this other friend that was a little bit older than him, and we hung out with him, and he lived on the other side of like in between Rockdale and Caldwell, and like out near Lexington. And he went to school with us. His name was Stuart. And I believe this guy. And we played Dungeons and Dragons with this dude, right? So that's a person you can trust. He's going to tell you the truth. So I asked Stuart, because he's like a year older than Keith, and I said, "Hi, Stuart, what is the deal? Is it true that Pac-Man was an experiment, whatever?" He went into this whole dissertation about it, and then I figured out where Keith got it from. But for a little while, I kind of believed that because, they're older. You don't realize they're just dumb and ignorant as shit. They're just saying things. Where he got it, I don't know. But, Lawrence says, what now? Puck man.
Oh, okay. That we just changed the P to an F.
Yeah. We turn that. It's hot in here.
Yeah, I got it.
Been raining today, but it's humid as hell. So we ended up like living in this area where there was a lot of weird stuff that happened. And I remember hearing noises at night. One of the things I heard when I was a kid, and I remember this because Eric, he reminded me. He says, "You remember how your dad would go to work at night and get this?" And I said, yeah. He would work every like he shift work. 1 week he was on Graves, or it would be days, then swing, then Graves, and then he had this long weekend where he was off for like 4 or 5 days, and then he would go back, cycle all over. And he was like, yeah. He's like, "Did you ever hear something like knocking on your window at night?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "That was me." I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yep." He goes, "Me and Spank, sometimes we would like go and mess with you and Keith and Chris and all y'all that lived out there. And we'd walk through the woods or the trail." And he goes, "And one time I put on a Halloween mask and I was going to scare the living crap out of you." He goes, "Because I could see the lights on in there." He goes, "And I heard you like on the phone talking to Keith." And he's like, "We were right there by your trailer and we heard you talking to Keith and you were talking about some girl you liked." And I was like, "Crap." And then he's like, "But I never told her who, I remember the girl too." And he goes, "And I never told her that you liked her." I said, "Well, wish you would have, because later on I found out she liked me too. And I never did tell her, And then he says, "Yeah, you were in there talking." And I told Spanks, I said, "Let's scare this little bastard." He goes, we started knocking on the glass. And then I heard you say, I don't remember this specifically, but I do remember hearing something tapping sometimes. And I heard it a few times. Now, this is what's weird. And I told Eric, I said, "How many times did you do it?" He goes, "Just once." I said, "Well, I heard it more than once. I heard it a few times." He goes, "Well, maybe Spanky was doing it." He goes, "But you scared the crap out of us because you were like, hold on. And you said you put the phone down. You told your friend, 'I'm going to load my gun.'" He goes, "We heard that and we were gone, dude. We just like took off. We're like, let's find some other way to have fun. Like we're going to mess with this dude because he's probably going to shoot us through the trailer." And I said, "Well, yeah, I had a gun right there by me, man. My dad, I had a 410 right there. I had my dad's pistol and I had something else, And so I was just like, yeah, no, back then, no, dude. I was, I said, "You'd have better luck with me now. I'm more restrained and I don't mess with, I'm very safe about guns, things like that. Back then, I'd have shot through that trailer if I thought you were a monster." And so he said, yeah, he goes, we just left, And he's like, "We didn't even go down to mess with Keith because he was more trigger happy than you." And he's like, "We were just like, yeah, you're going to mess with them. They're going to mess with us." And he goes, "And how embarrassing you get shot by a kid through the wall because you're over there trying to scare him." But Eric was pretty cool, man. And so he told me, he said he saw something one time on his back porch. He was messing with some tree bark or whatever, getting it off of a deal so he could carve. And he said, dude, he was sitting on the back porch and he heard like a whistling noise. Now, his girlfriend at the time, I remember her. She was really pretty, and she worked at the H-E-B pantry foods there in town. And I remember her she was Hispanic. And he goes, "Do you remember my girlfriend at that time?" And I said, her name was Gabrielle. And I said, "Yeah, I do." Everybody thought she was real pretty. And he was like, "You remember how she'd always be getting on to me and, whatever." And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, I would hear this whistling out there at my cabin." He was calling it a cabin. It wasn't a cabin. It was a structure. But it was a structure, right? But anyway, he said that he was sitting out there at his cabin. We'll call it a cabin for your sake, Eric. But he says that it was, and my girlfriend was out there, her and her sister. He goes, and I heard this whistle, and I whistled back. He goes, and them girls got on me. He goes, her younger sister slapped me upside the head. And she goes, "You baboso, Deo." He don't know how to speak Spanish. He goes, "They started telling me, 'You're so stupid. You're a Walio. You don't know what you're talking about. That's a demon you're whistling to." And he goes, "Really?" He goes, "I was in shock. I was like, so maybe that's why I've been seeing this weird thing come up." And then when they started talking to him about it, now they were convinced that it was a lechuza. But he said it didn't have no wings. It didn't do anything. It wasn't flying in any shape or form. He's like, but this thing, he's like, after I did that whistle, he said, I'm on the porch, and he goes, and that day I heard the whistling again. He goes, and it was dusk. It wasn't quite dark yet. He's like, and I'm telling you the truth, Josh. He goes, I was out there and I was cutting the tree bark out. He goes, and I look and I see this thing come up out of the woods. He goes, and it looked like a Native American. Straight up, dude. He's like, it was like it had like no shirt on. He's like, and it had like feathers that were down, hanging down. He goes, and I saw it. It was holding something like a rock or something, and it was moving its hand on it. It was looking at it, and it was looking at me. He's like, and you gotta say it because I don't know what it was. He's like, and then it just kind of turned like it was gonna walk away, and the pants, it didn't have pants, it just had like a flap, you know, the front and back. He's like, and then it looked naked other than that. He's like, and it looked like there was no shoes or anything. He goes, and then when it turned, it just kind of faded away, like, you know. He said, and I saw it again another time walking through the pasture. He goes, and I was out there feeding, and I was throwing the hay out there. He said, dude, and I hear that whistling again, and it was like a tune, like it was whistling something. Very loud, very, you know. He's like, and I'm out there throwing the hay out there, and the cows are coming, you know. And he said, and I could see behind these cows, I see this thing is like brown. And I remember the cows were Angus. They were black. He had a bunch of Angus out there. I said, so you had them black cows? He goes, yeah. And he goes, I said, oh, so you could see something that was light brown. And he goes, and it was tawny brown color, you know. He's like, and I look, and it's that native dude again. And once again, he turns and goes toward the woods. And when he does, he just fades away. And his buddy saw it too, you know. Spanky claimed to have seen that. And like I said before, he would lie and say things, but he was with his brother when he saw it. He goes, I believe Spanky, they were out in one of the tanks fishing. He goes, in Texas, I've said this before, you know, we call tanks, they're ponds, but we call them
they're
tanks.
man-made ponds.
Man-made, yeah, it's called tanks. They said they're out there fishing, and they see this guy like come out of the woods, and he looked like a Native American. Years later, back in like the early 90s, he said, when I finally moved out of that place, he said that they found the bones of like a person back there, and they dated him way back to like the 1800s. And this person had his head, like the skull had been caved in.
Ooh.
And he said that it looked like it was done by, like they used to have, the natives had these weapons they used. They were like a rock, and they would form them and then wrap them around like a handle, and they would use them to crack each other's heads open, you know. And he said that it looked like it was done by a Native American weapon, and that this person had died in the 1800s. And it was right there, back there in that tree line. Weird stuff, man. So maybe it was like a spirit that had been, you know, killed during some kind of war or something happened, you know. But man, so he ended up like moving out of that place. He goes, and then he's like, we tore it down. I used the wood to build another place. And I had to make a joke. I said, was it as crappy as that? He goes, no, it wasn't. He said it all indignant. He goes, I'll have you know it had running water and electricity. I said, oh, wow. He's like, and I had learned to build better. He's like, and I said, really, how was that? He goes, I hired people to do it. So he had some people build it. But he goes, I just used the lumber. I stripped the lumber out of it. And I told him, I said, how did you do it, man? Because, you know, if you're out there in the summertime, man.
Yeah.
Well, he said he had a generator and he had a window unit. You know, that thing will run out of gas. He goes, that son bitch will run out of gas. He goes, and I'd just be cooking. He said that the heat was his alarm clock.
Yeah.
He goes, about 7 a.m., you're just like, it's hot. I was like,
The heat, the sweat, and the mosquitoes are your alarm clock.
Pretty much. It's time to get up. You're getting eaten by mosquitoes. And then, I told him, I said, too, you probably had the dog, you know, she just died one day. Probably heartworms with mosquitoes.
Yeah.
And he goes, yeah, she was a good old girl. He liked that dog. But anyway, that was his stories, man. But it makes me think, you know, like, you know, where he saw that Bigfoot. He was out near Bryan College Station, but one time he was working on the other side of Jasper, Texas. And he was working with a guy. And now this is interesting. And I even remember the guy's name. He said the guy's name was Kevin. He worked with a dude named Kevin who claims, now this is a secondhand story. Kevin told him, he said when they were they had a bunkhouse, right, when they were working out there.
Mm-hmm.
And this dude was from Jasper, right outside of Jasper. He's like, if you go to Jasper, I'm going to give you my experience with Jasper. I had to go out there because at one time my brother was trying to get custody of his son, right? So I drove him out there. We're in the courthouse, and we had all these different people that had to go to see the judge that day. It was filled up with people. This guy comes out to the front of the courthouse. Before I tell the story, I'm going to give you some backstory here, right? He comes out to the front, and he's like naming people. He goes, so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. I'm not one of these people that's real judgmental. Like, if you're a hillbilly, you're a hillbilly, right? I've raised around hillbillies. My dad's family's hillbillies, and part of my mom's family is too. So I'm not going to make fun of that. But some people are just real hillbilly, you know? And I'm sitting there, and I'm just like, I'm tired, and I'm just like, oh, man, you know? And it's like, I'm just, you know, this is like early 2000s or mid 2000s, whatever. And my brother was still trying to get Zane. We hadn't even gotten him, you know, whatever. And I mean, I remember we were out there. It was probably like 2004, 2005. So I had a phone, you know, but it was a primitive phone. It was a little Nokia.
One of them indestructible Nokias.
Playing on that, playing Snake or whatever crazy game was there, you know.
Pong.
And I was like playing the game, whatever. And then they were like, put your phones away. And I'm like, I said, okay, Master Hillbilly's telling us what to do here. And then he goes, and if you're using tobacco, and this is true, I've told you this, no joking, man, and not even a BS, there's no chuckle house here, I'm being honest. He says, if you're using tobacco, he goes, get up and spit it out, dude. And I think all but maybe 4 people got up. There were women spitting out chaw. I'm not even joking. This one black lady in front of me, she's like, oh, hell, son of a bitch. And she got up, and I'm not even joking. It's an older black lady, you know. And she got up and she spit out her snuff, and I went and I spit mine out. And I said, well, I guess I'm fitting in here. Went to the Whataburger there after the whole thing went on. And there was a guy, and he was mopping. And my brother's laughing because he remembers. You remember that? My brother was, and it was a black kid, right? And he goes up to the front, and he's standing there, and he's like spitting in a cup while he's taking my order. So then I think the manager, I'm like going, oh. So there's this lady who's the manager. She walks up. She's a black lady. And she tells him, she said, Lucius, that's what his name. I remember his name too. She said, spit that shit out if you're going to be working up here. She says it right in front of all of us. You know? And I'm like, I don't think I want to eat here, you know. And he goes, takes it and just does like this. No lie. And just throws it right there. She's like, she says the N-word to him because she's, you know, she's black.
Yeah.
And she said it with the A, not a hard R.
The colloquial
She's
version.
like, you little N-word. She goes, you done threw it all over the floor. And he goes, you want to take that order? And he just like goes like that and walks off and goes and starts mopping again. And I'm like, and then she's like, I apologize about that. You know? And I'm like, who's making the food? Are they like Lucius? Because I look back there and there's this one guy, and he was like he looked like his hair was red as Ronald McDonald. And he was over there, and he was like, dude, like, what the heck? I mean, like his eyes was crossed like big time, man. I mean, I don't know. He was just some hillbilly white dude. I don't know who he was. But I was sitting there and I was just like, what the freaking heck? So I just looked at D and I said, man, we ain't eating here, bro. We're going to go somewhere else. So we went like the next town over. But I'm not even joking. He says pajama court. Yeah. And half of those people there were wearing pajamas. I'm not even joking, man. I'm not making this up. I'm not even the bailiff. He was falling asleep. He was like this. And the Texas flag kind of hit the wall. And the judge is like, hey. And the judge has a toothpick in his mouth. He's like, hey, Cletus, Wake up. I don't know. I don't remember his name. I'm just saying Cletus, but it was like that.
Yeah.
He goes, you going to fall asleep? My court. You're going to leave. And he's like, what can I do you for? Like, and he's like, what is this, dude? Like, brother,
You're just missing Gregory Peck to show up as Atticus Finch.
It was so bad. So consider the location, but that area has been a magnet for Bigfoot activity. It's in Southeast Texas, folks. It is the land that time forgot. The people there are all related. They are like, it is bad. I worked with a guy from there named Arnie, and he told me, he goes, dude, they're all inbred people. Like, this is what he said. And Arnie, he's a white guy, but he says the white people are inbred, the black people are inbred. They're all inbred. He's like, I'm talking like, it's bad. And I said, I could see that. I could totally see that. And I was like, I'm not trying to be like I'm sophisticated. Like, I lived in the sticks too, but we weren't like,
Yeah, but
it wasn't like that. I mean,
there's levels.
there's definitely
way.
some level
Yeah.
to this shit, man. I'm like sitting here going like, what is that?
There's like, you go to rodeo and grow your own crops, and then there's like hills have eyes living out of caves.
Patty said, Texas chainsaws. Yeah. Yeah, and it was crazy, man. When I saw that judge getting on the bailiff like that, I can't remember the guy's name. He had a normal name like Thomas or something, but it was like, why are you falling asleep in my court again? You're like, again? Well, you ain't paying me but $10 an hour. It's above minimum wage, boy. Picking his teeth like, got that barbecue stuck on my teeth. I can't eat over at Gristle's. Gristle's always got that gristle going on. That's why it's called Gristle's. So you got these kind of people, that are whatever. But there was a guy that he worked with. This is what Eric told me. He says, I worked with this guy named Kevin. He's like, and he's like, we was staying at the same place. It was a swimming pool right there. This was down near Texas City. What a wonderful place that is.
Oh man.
But in that area, he goes, and I was getting ready to go, and he's like, and so we were there at this hotel together. He's like, and this guy was from Jasper. He goes, and when he told me he was from Jasper, Eric was like, well, I had my reservations. He goes, he takes his shirt off. Get this. He goes, he's got this chunk of flesh ripped off of his back, on his left side of his back.
Dang.
And he goes, and this other guy we were with, we called him Paquito. He was a little Mexican dude. And his name was Hector. He said his name was Hector, but they called him Paquito. He's like, and Paquito, he goes, me and him worked together a few times. He goes, we did the offshore stuff. He goes, and he was best friends with another guy that gave me the job. He goes, and Paquito told him, he goes, hombre, what happened to your back? Who cut you up, man? Some girl got you? You're messing around. You had a sanchita or something, And he says, no, man, them wood boogers over there. They talk just like that, too. That's how they talk. He said, yeah, I was out there on the other side of Jasper, and we was cutting logs. And I came across this Bigfoot, like a monster. He says, on the other side of a tree, and it reached around and grabbed me. But it was, the woods are so thick over there. But this thing couldn't get between the two trees. So it reached around two of them and grabbed them. He said the arm was big as my back, the hand. He said the hand was probably a third the size of my back. And it ripped a big old chunk of flesh off me. I had to go to the hospital. And they said a grizzly bear did it. This is what Eric told me. He said, dude, it tore like all the way to the bone, and it tore my ribs open.
Oh.
He goes, and it was just nasty, grayish brown creature. And it had these big old claws. He goes, and it wasn't no bear. He goes, it was a Bigfoot. And he said, I'm lucky to be alive. He goes, I lost so much blood, I passed out on the way to the hospital. And he said, dude, it was very primitive facility there, and they had to send him to a bigger place down in, whatever, Houston, whatever. And he said that they had to fly him in a chopper. He was bad, He said, we finally got down there, and he goes, and there was a doctor there that was telling this guy, Kevin, he says, your wounds are consistent with something that I saw one time from somebody, who was working in the Sam Houston National Forest or State, whatever.
Mhm.
And he said that person had claimed the same thing, that a creature had like grabbed them and tore part of their shoulder. He said, working out, because he used to work in Huntsville, this doctor. He said, in working there, dude, he goes, there were people the one lady had broke her leg. She claimed she got chased by one of these creatures. And so he's like, but that wasn't the doctor that helped him. That was a doctor that came to see him because he had heard about his wounds. And this doctor was not on duty. He just wanted to talk to him about it.
Yeah.
Because he was interested in it. And so that guy said there was a doctor there that believed me. He told him, yeah. He's like, this is real.
So he probably seen it before.
So he said, I asked the doctor, you writing a book? And he says, no, I just wanted to talk to you because it's an interest of mine, But yeah, I mean, when you stop and you think about it, I mean, like, I don't know. If this happens to you, what are you going to do? I mean, how many people are going to believe you if you tell them, And when he told Eric, this is back in the early 2000s, I mean, like, how many people are going to believe you if you say that?
Yeah, you just have to lie and tell people it was a bear.
Mm-hmm. But this guy didn't. He just told the truth. He said, this is what happened, at least the truth to him. So another story, Eric got me in touch with a guy who had a story about a reptilian. Now, we're going to get into it eventually, probably on next Wednesday. And I got to talk to this guy because he's got a bunch of stuff. He swears up and down. He moved in with this woman who became his wife. And they were roommates. He rented a room from her. And when they started talking, she says, I got to tell you, my neighbors are really weird. I don't know if you guys remember us having David Weatherly on one time. I called him and said, hey, tell me that story about the reptilian people. He called them the snakeheads. These people that lived next door to her, she was convinced that they were reptilians. And she had her reasons. So anyway, this guy he got me in touch with, he's told me this whole story. So we're going to get into that. Yeah, probably on Wednesday. But if you guys have any questions or anything you want to talk about, let me know. So one of the things that this guy claimed, he says, dude, he goes, I started researching it and going down the rabbit hole of the reptilians and all that, what they are and who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that this is another secondhand story that came from this guy, but I'm going to speak to this man myself. I've already corresponded with him, so it's going to happen next week. But he said there was a guy that he used to work with on the oil rigs. This is another guy that Eric worked with. And he said that he was working off the coast of Malaysia on a, whatever we call it, like a offshore, whatever.
Oh, like an oil rig?
Yeah, oil rig, whatever. And this guy was Asian. And he swore up and down that he watched a person be devoured. Like they literally arrested this dude in Indonesia. And this guy literally told the police his friend had been devoured and eaten by two men that were not human. And that this guy had chased him into a restaurant. I don't know the whole details or whatever, but this is a story that he got because he lived with this woman and ran into these beings that he could only describe as, thank you, Rita, for that donation. Thank you so much. But he only could describe as being reptoid. And he said, so there was a guy that he worked with on one of the oil rigs, and he was from Indonesia. And like I said, they didn't pick a fight. His friend, I guess, kind of started it or whatever. I mean, he got mouthy with these two guys. And the bartender at this Indonesian, I don't even know what city he was in. I will get the details of that. But this is what the story was that Eric told me. And then when I corresponded with this guy, he said, if Eric told you that, he goes, that's the truth. He's like, I worked in Asia, these different places. And he said that this guy that he worked with, he told him Now, because this is another weird thing. Now, I asked Eric after we talked about this, and he goes, I don't know what to believe about that. He goes, I mean, I saw a Bigfoot. He goes, and I met a guy who claimed to have been hurt by a Bigfoot, who wasn't at first really interested in talking about his wounds, but because Paquito kept messing with him, that's how it all got in, He's like, and the guy was from Jasper. He's like, it's a different breed. Who knows? Maybe it was his pet bobcat that did it. I don't know. I mean, we was going to cook him, but we got a little friendly with him. We named him Tim, And if you're from Jasper, I'm sorry. Not for talking bad about you, but I'm sorry that you're from there. But no,
All 15 of you.
yeah. Well, there's more than that, but still, I mean, they're all related. Don't mess with them. You don't want them on you. But so, he said, this guy, he told me, he's like, dude, I'm going to tell you right now. He's like, this is the truth. He's like, I'm not even joking, man. He goes, there was this guy, he told me this whole story. He goes, they went into a bar and they were off the coast of Indonesia, not where his friend was at. His friend, this is a guy worked with him in Malaysia. But this happened off the coast of Indonesia, and then they went to this port city. I don't remember which one it was. And he said that they were in a bar. They got into an argument or whatever, and they followed them. He's like, and then they just, one of them came out of an alley and just kind of like flew at him and jumped on his friend, and the other one came. He's like, and I could see their clothes like they were wearing. He's like, but now they didn't look like human beings. They had lizard heads, and they just bit him on the back of the head, and then the other one just started tearing into his gut. So he took off running, dude. He's like, he goes, I ran. So this guy told that story to a guy that Eric worked with. And that guy, I messaged that guy, and I said, there's a story that he told me about. He goes, I got that one, and I got another one. Yeah. And the whole thing came up because they were telling scary stories because we were there on the rig, and we were time off, and we were playing cards. There's not a lot to do. You're in the middle of the ocean, And he said that he said, dude, my wife, told me that she lived next door to reptilians. He's like, I didn't believe it. And he goes, but then I met them, and I had some weird stuff happen, but most of it happened to my wife. He's like, but I believe it now. And it was weird. There's some freaky stuff, dude. I'm not even joking. It is some freaky ass stuff that he told me. Because you don't know who you're living next door to.
No.
You really don't. I mean, you don't know what's inside their house. You could go inside the house and be like, oh, this is, what's that smell? It smells like rotted flesh in here.
Yeah.
They could be like Dennis Nielsen and shoving, oh, we got the sewage backed up. There's an old chap there in the toilet. What? Who's in the toilet? Oh, I don't know. I said my butt's slapping the toilet. I don't know what it.
Or like Jeffrey Dahmer. I got some meat in the fridge.
It went bad.
Went bad.
You don't know what kind of vampires they could be or what kind of reptilians they could be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was better when I didn't know all this. You just drive down the neighborhood.
Blissfully ignorant.
You don't look at the house the same anymore if you do this crap, folks. You don't know what I go through. Now I got to look at the house and go, wonder what they're doing in there.
Yeah.
Who are they eating? No, no.
Who are they having over for dinner?
Yeah. So I mean, it's funky, So he said that this guy told him. He says, "Dude, I witnessed this." He said the guy kind of got up from the table and was like walking around, kind of nervous. And he turns back and he says, "Man," he said, "I watched my friend get killed and eaten by these lizard things." And the guy asks him, he says, "What do you mean?" He says, "Nah, dude, they're real." He's like, I don't know that they were ever human at all. I don't think they were. They're not hybrids because these were lizards. I mean, they looked like lizards with clothing. And he goes, they were able to look like humans at the bar. He goes, but I saw their eyes slit up at the bar. And I grabbed my friends. That's a bad idea. And the Indonesian authorities were not in any hurry to go and try to arrest these people or do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, when he went to make the report, so a lot happens to people, the cops just decide that they're going to mess with you because you're rocking the boat or being a troublemaker.
Yeah. Of course. You're making them do paperwork, so
Mhm.
you got to mess with you, punish you for making a report.
Yep. We had something happen to us recently. I'm not going to talk about it too much here, but guys sitting there acting stupid, wouldn't listen, wouldn't leave, and started talking about he had a gun. His friend was saying that he didn't. His friend was saying he was lying. We don't know. And we call the police, and then the police are like, oh, well, you know, these guys aren't, you know, they're not doing anything bad. Because we live in a sanctuary city. You know, I mean, I'm not even going to get into it, man. I
It's
was
just totally backwards.
totally
Put it that
backwards, and
way.
I was totally I was like, you're not going to arrest these people. Nope. Great. But they were totally into messing with us. So, yeah, there's that. I'm not even going to get into it. If it gets worse, though, I will be very public about it because it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous. And finally just demanded to be cut loose. I'm like, let me go. If you're not going to arrest us or them, let us go. And Tony issued this criminal trespass, and we left. But it was ridiculous. And so I get it. So this guy, he goes to the Indonesian authorities, and what do? They mess with him. They arrest him. He's in there for 2 days. Then they let him call, and one of his guys came and got him, and they took him back out to the rig. But yeah, totally ridiculous behavior. And he's like, dude, they killed one of our workers. He killed a friend of ours. And they couldn't find any of the bodies, so there was no crime. So he just wandered off. So, yeah. So anybody got anything else to say or whatever? Let me know. Or we can talk about whatever. Yep, Sailor, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're here in Austin, if you're a protester or if you're an illegal or you're a homeless person. Now, when I say homeless people, I'm not talking about somebody down on their luck. Folks, you got to understand something. That's not what we're talking about. Though nobody would be more sympathetic than me. I've been down on my luck, and I've been without a place to live temporarily. These are not people that are down the luck without, no.
It's like the same with the cats. They're basically just feral at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm not even going to get into what happened, but that guy that came up to the window.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there, and he's in Nellie's window, and he like, dude, we don't know who this guy is. We don't know what he wants. He looks high as F. And he's, you know, like,
It's late at night.
Dude, I mean, and what did I say right before that? I said, I hate this light.
Because there's always
some zombies creeping around, and then we're sitting there for a couple of minutes, and then Tony, you're like, look over there, and I look, and there's this guy, and he's over there like, you know, and you're just like, what is he doing? What is this? You know, sure enough, we caught his attention, so he came running over to the window and got up, you know, and I was like, thank God the light changed, because I was like, here we go. And I'm telling you, man, unless you experience it, you deal with it. We don't have that. Somebody asked me about that Green Boudica. We don't have that property anymore, thank God. What a nightmare. It's horrible. And so, you know, now you have all these rioters or whatever, the protesters that were here for No King's Day or whatever the shit they're calling. So they were all running around, acting a fool and
being fatherless on Father's Day.
Yeah, so Scorp had to deal with him because he was right there in the middle of the shit. He was working right off of 6th Street. So, yeah, and that's the same place where me and Zane had the issue when they were rioting, and they came walking down the street in a big horde, and I had to talk to them and basically negotiate with them and tell them, dude, these people that live in this place, they're working, they're not bothering anybody. These aren't rich people. They just live here, you know. You want to tear something up, tear up the corporate places. So they did. They tore up Whole Foods and Target, you know, but I was like, dude, it was better to destroy property than to attack a place, you know, that had people living in it. And thank God I was able to talk to them, you know, but I mean, this is the world we're living in, folks. It's dangerous and it's cruel and it's messed up. It's very messed up. Dick Richards. So we are going to do the Monday show tomorrow, Richard. So you want to come on? Alan. Yeah. No, they didn't loot Sailor. Now, from what I know, they didn't loot. They just screamed and yelled and threw temper tantrums. And the hair dye is affecting their brains or whatever.
Yeah. Seeps into their scalp.
But did you guys hear? Apparently, I wear hair plugs.
Oh yeah. Of course, everybody knows that.
So I took a photo during COVID of me wearing the mask,
Mhm.
and I took the picture, and of course the light was shining on my head, so it looks right here. You just see this bright spot on my head.
Yeah.
So the ops tried to make it out like I was bald.
You and Abe, apparently.
Yeah, we're bald. We wear hair plugs, and I'm like, oh my god.
And you have evil eyes, I guess.
Well, satanic eyebrows.
Hair plugs are
No,
pretty
they talked
obvious
about
to
your
spot.
eyes specifically.
Oh, now they said my eyes
Yeah,
are.
Dana.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. So apparently, okay, so now I have evil eyes. My eyebrows are satanic, and I wear hair plugs. You want to talk about jealous, dude? Now think about this, folks. Common sense would dictate to you if you took a picture like that and you saw your head bald on one side, and that was during the I had the show at that time too. So how did I go bald? And then I had hair.
Magic.
Yeah. So I had hair, then I lost the hair, and then I had hair. Because if you look at the date on that, it was like 3 or 4 years ago, and we were doing the show.
Mhm.
So how did I get on the show and have hair and then lose my hair and then have hair again? That quick.
Black magic.
Exactly. Black magic hair plugs.
That satanic black magic.
Yeah. So it was insane that these people, things they say, but it is hilarious. Some of the crap they say, folks. You want to laugh? Let's do some laughing. Let me see if I can find a really good one. What's a good one that we can laugh about?
What a good comment?
No, just like a good, or like Ella posted the thing about the barnacles. Some people are barnacles. That one's pretty good. So you have this one woman who's always praying for our death.
Yeah, I got one here where she's praying for us to have a dogman encounter in Yeshua's holy name. Amen. Yeah, look, check this out.
What?
She says, and I do earnestly pray for Josh Turner and Nelly to have a real dogman encounter with a pack of pissed off rabid dogmen. In Yeshua's name, amen. And then you got this dude leaving a comment. But if he ever did actually see one, his pee-pee would probably crawl up inside out of fear. Oh well. That's the kind of people like that are like talking crap. So we got demented, crusty old Dana praying for y'all to have a dogman encounter that just kills y'all, tears y'all up, and she's praying for this in Jesus' name.
Wow.
I'm sorry, no, in Yeshua's name, because everybody knows that if you say it like that, then it makes you sound smarter.
Yeah, and then one of them, the old doucher, he's always calling my wife names and attacking her and saying all kinds of crap. Vile. Here's the picture they're talking about right here. Give it a look-see. That's like a glare from the light. So this picture, if I remember, I took that back in like 2020 or 21, maybe 2021. And so they went way back in my Facebook to find these things. But we were doing the show and we were doing the live stream at that time. So if you look at that picture, that's a glare from the light at a place we were eating dinner at. It looks even more glaring when you do it. Look at like there. But they said that this picture is what made me get hair plugs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So why would I take a picture like that? And then if I wanted to get hair plugs, wouldn't you be very comfortable with being bald if you did that? I mean, you would think common sense would rule and be like, hey, but I have common sense. They don't. And you would be like, well, I got hair plugs. And let me tell you something, Fat Mike. Can I call you Fat Mike? Thanks. Because you're fat. That's why I call you that. But here's the thing. You are actually bald and you're actually fat and your house is full of roaches. That is the truth. That is we know that, right? That is those are
warts
those
and
are
skin
facts,
tags.
and you're covered in warts and skin tags. And you're if you're not obese, you're borderline, but you say that everybody else is fat and you're always calling everybody else obese. Whatever. But yeah, there's no hair plugs, dude. That's a glare from a freaking dill. But yeah, there's a ton of and apparently everybody's cheating on their wives.
Oh yeah.
Apparently. Me and Abe and Tex and everybody, we're all running around cheating. That's their go-to now.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, you don't have a wife, do you? You always strike me as the kind that liked educating young boys.
You tell your benefactor not to leave no slime on his way out of town.
Good grief, dude. Man, the stuff that comes out of that group.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's horrible. It is absolutely horrible, the things they say. Okay, here's another one. So they made a video saying that I like Hitler. So what he does is he clips things. Like right now, I just said, they made a video saying I like Hitler. So he clips the videos because he's good at that. That's what he does. And he takes it out of context and he posts it on TikTok and on I don't remember where else he did it. And so what he says is he makes the video saying I like Hitler, and then Anthony's saying, so what are you going to do about it? Right? Yeah, because that's the case, man. I'm just totally I'm down with the Hitler, whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
So he says, and they keep calling me Iron Bear King. So there's this place that Barton and his wife seem to be really enthralled with when they showed up, because they didn't tell us, but they took pictures of the place when they were here and we were driving through downtown. I didn't know the place existed, and they took a picture of it. So I can only assume that that's where it came from. I don't know. But that's what Nellie thinks, that's what happened, because they were like, look, there's a gay bar when we drove by it. And I was like, that whole area's got a bunch of freakazoids down there. But never been in the place. Never been in that bar in my life, even when it wasn't that. But it's called the Iron Bear. Well, I kept calling it the Iron Bull. It's called the Iron Bear. So they tried to spin the narrative that I'm some homosexual and that I go into the Iron Bear and go dancing around in assless chaps. And can you imagine that? Oh, dude. But I'm the kind of person that if I was that, I would just be like, hey, this is me. It's who I am. I'm not going to deny it or hide it if I was. Although I don't agree with that lifestyle. It's not, I'm not going to get into a whole, that's not my thing, man. But Mike uses an account called Rebecca Valencia Valentine. And I've said that on Facebook. That's his account. He uses it. This guy's name is Mike. That's the one that Tony started calling Fat Mike.
Mm-hmm.
That's who he is. And so Tony coined that. But he says, just remember, everyone, Josh did admit to loving Hitler. Anthony challenged people and said, what we got to do about it? What we going to do about it? That is not disavowing, right? Also, whenever Josh Iron Bear King Turdner starts accusing people of things, did he show proof? Yes, we did. Absolutely. It's in PRT News. Go look at it. He says, can he validate that proof? And he says, so we know it's not AI. After all, he accuses of others of doing it before. I don't even, the way this guy writes. He says, if he never shows proof, we'll just say it in his voice. If he never shows proof, then why should anyone ever believe Josh Iron Bear King Turdner always think because he doesn't think highly of his supporters? That's why he lies in front of them because he willing to bet they are stupid. And you know it's him because of the way he types. That's why he lies in front of them because he's willing to bet they are stupid. Heck, for all we know, they are. He's calling you guys stupid, right? Who the F, he says the bad words on here because remember, it's not him. It's Rebecca Valentine or whatever. Who the F supports a guy who loves Hitler? That to me is the most anti-American thing I ever heard coming from that fat bastard. Calling me a fat bastard is like a hippo making fun of a water buffalo. We've shown pictures of you. People have captured photos of him. Just big old, just a huge, sloppy guy. You're as wide as you are tall. And you think by walking around your property and throwing rocks and calling it Bigfoot that it makes you a researcher. In fact, you're a boots on the ground. Boots on the ground. Now that he loves that. Here's an actual photo of him. It's a recent one. Where you can see he has lost some weight.
He's getting in shape.
He's getting in shape. I'm getting in shape. Big cat. Big cat. Yeah, that's what he's doing. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. So, yeah. So there's the proof right there. There's the proof, Ike. We call you Ike. You know why we call you Ike? He said it's because we're casting spells. No, we call you Ike because Ike Clanton. You're Ike Clanton, dude. That's what you are. And you're jealous. You're jealous because I can go to the gym and do things and you can't. Because you don't leave your property. But that's what inbred people do. They stick around their own domiciles.
Keep it in the family.
Mm-hmm. Sean Hertel. Wasn't he in law enforcement? No, that's a funny thing, D-Truth.
He claimed he was.
He claimed he was. He actually told me on the phone, okay, true story, that he was an Oklahoma police officer and that he goes, it was horrible when I had to go and deal with wrecks because those were the worst because he had to see kids that had been murdered, killed, whatever. He told me this. So, yeah, it's funny. Yes, he's a joke, Jesus, but it's just you can get 1,000 hours of comedy out of these people. See, you think that we're in a race. We're not. You think that we are competitors. We're not. You think that we are rivals. We're not. You are a joke.
You're an annoying flea that keeps biting us.
Yeah. And at this point, you're just here for humor and shits and giggles. And it's funny. It is damn funny. You lead a pack of trolls, and you refer to us as trolls. In fact, you know what he does? He has a co-host. We call her cool. Well, I don't call her that because I think it's, whatever. But it is fitting.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little mean, but she's a very mean person who does mean, says, take your own medicine.
I call her the violator.
Take your own medicine, woman. But here's what it is. She has a show, some little crappy show that I didn't even know she had until a couple months ago. Somebody told me that she's got a show, whatever. He goes in there and he trolls her. This is what I honestly believe. He trolls this woman, and she's so stupid and ignorant that she thinks it's me because he says that he's kicking me out of there because someone sent a clip of him just a couple weeks ago of him saying, yeah, I just kicked Josh Turner out of the chat. Dude, why would I even go look at this dumpster fire of a channel? Which from what I hear, is a smaller, crappier version of his channel. We're at the Krusty Krab and you're at the chum bucket. Do you understand that you are plankton? Do you understand that?
It's all
I
low
think that's
quality
giving him a little
garbage,
credit.
dude. The video is garbage. It's like low quality 240p dial-up streaming. The audio is garbage. It's like echoey laptop mic crap. The lens looks like someone wiped Vaseline on it before they started recording or streaming. There's no production value. Y'all don't know how to do anything. See this chat up on the screen? That's something that you will never, ever, 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 ever figure out how to do.
Yeah.
You see this back, forth, multi-camera streaming. You see that? You will never, ever, ever figure that out, no matter who tries to teach you, because you're just too stupid. You don't have what it takes. You are a dumb moron, and your shows suck, and they're never going to grow. You're a bottom feeder, and you're always going to stay there. You are never going to get out of your financial poverty, of your failure. You're going to stay right there where you belong, scraping the bottom like a
barnacle,
like an algae eater, like a barnacle. That's it.
Ella said it's barnacles.
Like a shrimp, nothing more. You know, or
I still think
like an
that's too much
oyster,
credit
like
to
the like your mouth, like that black
what'd you
oyster
say?
in
I
your
still
mouth.
think that's too much credit to him.
Tony,
At least bottom feeders
Tony-
have
when
purpose.
Tony
Yeah, they
said
serve a
Fat Mike
purpose.
and the, I'm not going to say the other word.
No, I wanted to say it.
Yeah, I
so
want to say it
bad,
too, but
but
it's like when you said Fat Mike and the D word, I was like, what? Oh, so it's not even like at this point, folks. It's not even like it's just something to talk about because it's funny.
You're never making it out of your trailer ever. You will never live in anything but that trailer on that crappy little dumpy piece of land. That's it. That's all you're ever going to have. You were born there, you're going to live there, and you're going to die there, and you're never ever going to have anything outside of that, because that's where you belong. You belong down here, right here, and the rest of us belong up here. You don't deserve good things at all. I'm glad you have nothing. I'm glad you're poor. I'm glad that you have to live off the government.
And folks, you think we're being mean or whatever? You know, when somebody puts you through hell and drags your wife through the mud and says all the crappy things that they could possibly come up with.
I mean, we said some things, but it was just some of the stuff that we're allowed to say on YouTube. I mean, I have some of these posts that I could find that there's one of the D's said that is just ridiculous. They're talking about like they said, they went from your eyebrows to your eyes to your hair, and they even started talking about your lower member. So it's ridiculous how actually disgusting these people are. And they do it to you, to Abe, to everyone. And they constantly pray for the worst. Like there's a post here where she's talking about praying for all the most horrible things to happen to everyone. And it's like, that's not what prayer is.
Yeah, and if somebody did that, like one of our supporters or listeners, one of the paratroopers did that or said that, it would be gone. I don't care how vile or evil these people are. You don't make a prayer that somebody dies.
Yeah, you don't pray that someone runs into a dog man or a Bigfoot because you're mad at them.
The fact that they're still saying and doing these things is just it's beyond, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It's not jealousy; it's insanity. It's obsessive stalkerish insanity.
What's something you would expect from a jealous ex or something, you know, like. And so anyway, folks, it's just gotten so ridiculous. It's now just a big joke, you know, and I think most people know that it's a big joke, you know. It's like I just don't know because they don't stop. You know, they're every day with this. And, you know, I have a job, I have a career, I have things I got to take care of. I've been not able to do the show because I've been working. These guys, man.
Exactly. It's the player haters ball.
It's the player haters ball.
I'm glad you're poor because you refuse to work.
Yeah, and they're like, you know, they're those people who they need their benefits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he's always masquerading like he's a right-wing Republican guy. He's actually a Democrat. He's a registered Democrat, and that would make sense because he gets his
welfare.
He
gets his government check from them Democrats.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh! He said he was injured in the line of duty in law enforcement. Oh,
what, walking?
His own family has publicly said that he was not ever a law enforcement and that he had actually hurt himself unlocking a gate at his job. It was the last time he worked.
Mm-hmm. But then he also had another story where his friend smacked him in the face with a slapjack.
Yeah,
and that's where his disability. Which I don't know how that works.
I heard that it's
all a lie
or something. Yeah,
it's all a lie. Like everyone knows you're committing disability fraud, like Social Security. You're committing fraud. That's a federal offense. What you're doing, because you're on stream doing boots on the ground. But how are you going to do that when you're on disability? You're clearly not disabled, stupid. You're just living off the government, getting your welfare check because you're too lazy to work, and you're always going to be poor because of it.
No, Night Watcher says they probably kicked him out. Of course, no. But Larry Fisher used to be a cop. He was. That's like his right-hand guy.
Mm-hmm.
But they've tried every trick in the book. Mike tried to come to me and tell me that, Hellbent Holler was teaming up, trying to get him to team up against me. And he has this thing with Hellbent Holler because I think he looked at them as a rival too.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm telling you, like, look at their show as compared to his. Go look at his show. Like, people are like, oh, don't send traffic to him. Do you understand? When they go and look at his show, they're gonna run in terror.
Yeah.
Not because of the terror, of his.
Start projectile vomiting.
They're not going to go, his show's scary, not in the way that he wants you to be. It's scary because of the roaches and all the stuff that he's doing and saying. Dude, that's the thing. I mean, you're not going to be afraid for the reasons he wants you to be afraid. Yeah. You're going to be afraid, but it ain't like, hey, you're going to be afraid. You know what I mean? So I don't really care. Like, people are like, you're just going to give him views. Who gives a shit?
Well, he hates.
He buys them anyway.
He hates Hellbent Holler especially because the field investigation work that they do with the production value is they set the standard like up here, but he wants it down here. This is where he does his boots on the ground, and then Hellbent Holler's way up here doing actual field investigations, not just going hiking and barbecuing and drinking beer and calling that boots on the ground or whatever. No, that like they actually do interesting things with high quality video and audio and equipment.
They leave their property.
Yeah, and he didn't.
So they're a threat to him, like a direct threat.
He didn't like Abe or Bettina. He hated them. He hated their guts. He didn't like Jerry or Ella Williams. He hated their guts. Now, while he simultaneously, I'm just going to address you directly. You do this. You attack Jerry Williams' native beliefs. He's a Choctaw tracker, and you attack him, right? Out of jealousy, I'm sure. At the same time, you're claiming that I'm attacking your native beliefs. Let me tell you something, dude. I'm a quarter Comanche. You're not even a quarter native, but in your state, they give you a little card that says you're native for being like 164th or whatever. So you're barely any native at all, but they give you a card, and of course you show it to everybody. It's got a booger on it. That's your fault, dude. Why, at least clean the booger off, Like, but people, have you ever like talked to somebody? You go into their house or something, and it's messed up. Not to be mean, I'm like trying to be ugly or whatever, but it's gross or something, and you're like, dude, you're going like, whoa, dude, because they're used to it. They're used to the smell of their house, and they're used to like the junk that's around there, and so they don't think nothing of it. That's why he was so comfortable with showing everybody a card with a booger on it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even joking, man. I mean, not even. And Sean says boogers are hilarious. They are. But I just was like, holy crap, dude, you're used to that. And with roaches crawling around behind you, you're fine with that. And so there have been multiple people from this community who've been inside my house. David Weatherly, Ken Gerhardt, Ann Celine. A lot of people from this community who've been inside, not the house I live in now, but they've been inside the houses we've lived in. And there wasn't no trash and garbage and animal feces everywhere and all this other crap that they say, whatever. That's ridiculous. Because I'm the person that, like, if you got nasty stuff, you're not going to have people going inside your house. You're not going to have that happening. Like, what is wrong with these people? We have guests all the time, and they're not going, man, your house stinks. It smells like booty sweat or something. I mean, you're not having that problem.
Yeah.
Clean yourself. Even though we work all the damn time, we still clean the house. Maddie was telling me yesterday about some woman that was on TikTok talking about, I shower once a week because I don't smell. There's some Hispanic woman or whatever. And you're like, you're going to tell me that you don't shower because you don't smell? Dude, that is the most ignorant shit I've ever heard. But you know what I thought when she said that? I thought of those people. They probably don't think that they do. They wear the same damn shirt every damn day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's unbelievable. Anyways, I just wanted to have a good laugh, folks, and have something to do. You know, something there's, you know. Thank you to everybody who donated. Thank you to everybody who's at the show, who showed up and supports us and having some issues with my voice. You know, they're probably throwing their spells and curses or whatever, because whatever they do while they're doing it, they say that you're doing it.
Yeah.
And we've been getting messed with a lot lately.
Well, they're watching right now, doing it. Because they'll clip stuff like in the middle of like a 2, 3, 4 hour live stream. They'll go like right in the middle of it and clip that. It's like, how do you know that that's being said unless you're sitting there watching the whole thing?
And you know, that's what he does.
Mm-hmm.
He's sitting there like this. I'll do it. There he is right here. Can't get a good hat. You don't have good hats. I don't have one that's not good. Here, let's do that one. I think just put it. Here he is right here. He breathes through his mouth. And he gets winded. If you ever listen to his, when he goes and walks around.
Oh, yeah, every time he starts to speak.
Dude, he goes, good evening, folks. I got down by the river. That's him. And he sits there with his glasses. Like, dude, I know that's what you're doing. What?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do it again.
He's constantly just,
Oh, yeah.
oh, folks. Oh, yeah. Oh, there's lights in there.
And then it's like this.
Oh, I got a bug on me. I'm going to pretend like I'm not used to that.
I got a bug. I got a bug on me. I got a bug on me.
Oh, with my shadow.
Look at me. Look at me as a bunny man walks behind me in the. Oh, dude. If I wanted to, I could just like troll people and just do this and make fun of people and make a show and you would laugh your ass off. But I'm interested in the subject that we're supposed to be talking about. So I can't just do that. But I would love to just like, you know, go around the internet, not just in the paranormal, but just go around the internet and find the goobers and just talk and make fun of them. Expose them for whatever it is that they're saying, because most of it's crap. And just laugh and make fun, because like the lady talking about, I don't bathe, I don't show, like, I'm not something to be proud of. I got some people up in Oklahoma you could hang out with, lady, because they don't either.
Watch out, Wolf. A dog man threw something at you.
Was that a booger?
I was thrown by a Bigfoot.
That's thrown by the Bigfoots. Oh no! I got a bug on me! I got a bug on me! Let me move this way. Cue my sister in a bunny outfit. There she is. Okay. And then let me get some other dumbasses to come on there and let's cross-examine this. And he goes, now if you look at this thing, it's I forgot what he says. I don't really retain it too much, but somebody had sent a clip and it was like him doing with the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it ended up in PRT News, but he was, I got a bug on me. And then he moves and people, you can see a fat person walk across. I mean, it's one of his relatives. Take your pick.
Yeah.
And so that's what's going on. And then, then he sits there and he invites some other morons, the douche burger, his last name is Douche.
Oh, yeah.
And they get there and he's over there like, that devil looks like a Bigfoot.
Let's look at the data.
And then he has this other goofy person on there who was like, wow, that's amazing. You got a actual cryptid behind you. He's like, and you can tell the way it walks, it ain't a person. It's a fat person. It's just a fat person. It's a fatty old fat person walking across. That's all it is. Let's go pretending. But that's what you got going on, folks. You got that, and there's something in my eye. Oh. I can't even do this. I don't know. And then he thinks if he can destroy us and run us away, that he's going to become something. Let me tell you something. If you were to go and burn somebody's house down, people aren't going to go, oh, Your house is wonderful. They're going to go, no, that the house was burned down and it's down the street from that trashy house. They're still going to look at your house and go, it's trashy. They're not going to go, oh, well, that house looks so much nicer now that the other one's burned down. Does that make sense? You see what I'm saying? You're still going to have a trashy, unkept house. It's just going to have your neighbor's houses burned down. And it's even going to do more, though. It's going to devalue you. You going around and attacking and being whatever, you and the violator, doing what you do, saying the cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs things that you do and say, they're not helping you. It's just going to make the whole community look bad. And then you're going to be the laughing stock. But that's what needs to happen, folks. That's what this is. You got to call them out. And when you find them, don't let them escape. Make sure that they're held accountable. You were talking in your Damon Peterson account, Mike, about how you wanted to hold people accountable. I have the screenshots. That was you. We know it was you. 100%. Because we also have you talking to Janice Blake, a therapist from Virginia, who claims that these two committed a home invasion.
Yep.
You tried to pin a home invasion on us. You were talking on your show about conspiracies against you. No, you are the one that does that. And y'all are yucking it up.
Even bragging with Janice about your little Peterson Damon stunt about how that's your account. And both you and her use it because she was like, should we do the Peterson Damon thing again? Mm-hmm. Like it's funny that y'all use like a fake account with a black person's profile to go and say vile things.
Yeah, and Ella Williams pointed out, that's Jerry Williams' wife that was on our show. She pointed out that you use that black man's picture so you could say and do racist things. The same thing you did with the Lil Bray Bray when you said the racist things you did
about Bettina.
With Bettina, especially whenever she had Chris Caratano on. He was shocked at what you did. And you got your buddy, Lion Larry, to get up there and just, rampage. And y'all were rampaging through the community, all of you together. And then you got the liar from the LBL, the hoaxer, Roger Rabbit. You all got together. And then you got Barton. And what happened? You all fell apart. Because you can't help but attack people, even if they're your ally. You troll your friend Jessica, but she's too stupid to see that it's not me, Jessica. My hand to God. It isn't me. I've never trolled you guys because I don't.
We don't want to be around y'all.
I don't watch your shows. The only time I ever hear or see is when somebody sends a clip of what you say. And most of the time, I don't even react. I just don't have time for it. It's foolishness. But your day will come. And if you don't go where you need to for all the things you've done and said, whatever, then eventually in the afterlife, you will pay for your crimes, your sins. It will happen. Because, folks, in this life, there are no free rides. And at some point, you will have to stand in judgment for what you say and do.
You either pay now or you pay when it really matters.
And you'll ask why this man is willing to do these things, because he doesn't believe. He does not truly believe. This is a grift for him. He does not believe in any of this, and he doesn't believe in God. He doesn't believe in Christ. And if you did, you wouldn't be lying and saying all the horrible, unscrupulous things you do and say. I'm already given to the you're of a reprobate mind and you're never going to change. So I'm done with you. You continue to do what you say, continue to do what you do, and keep on. Because when the time comes, you're going to be very, very sorry, dude. You're going to be in big, big trouble with I can't even imagine the karma you've built. I wouldn't be you for all the money in the entire world. If they told me we're going to give you every wealth of the earth, I wouldn't be you. Because what does it benefit a man to gain the world and lose his soul? So, folks, remember that. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for making PRT the best of what it is. All we can do is pray for these people. But honestly, I'm not even doing that right now because it's not. I don't think so.
But at least we know that they're praying for our death. So There's
Yeah.
that.
Well, Red.
I mean, they're of a reprobate mind. Let them be. You
I
know,
want to say happy birthday to Michael and James. They turned 41.
happy birthday, folks. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there, to all the dads. All right, guys, we're going to run. Thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, check out, we dropped Nellie's 5 songs of her new album. They are on Paranormal Roundtable.
Mhm.
You can go look at them. Go to playlists, and it's on there. Just go to Paranormal Roundtable, YouTube, go to playlist, boom, 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 and it'll pop up.
They did really good.
Dead Poets. The Byzantium is my favorite song, but you know you can pick which one you like. She made the Fall of the House of Usher.
That was a really good
Damn,
one.
it's good. That's a good song. I was jamming.
She
it
wasn't
all
really
weekend.
familiar with that story too, but like she picked it up and got it down.
Mhm. So that she, I mean, just she writes the lyrics, man. It's not AI. People say, "Oh, it's all AI." No, she uses part of it. It's AI, but the lyrics are all her. They are not AI generated. That is not true. So these people that are lying and saying that once again is these maniacs, but it's not the case. So if you go and you listen to the music, I mean, and if it's not as simple. Like you can't just type in the words and it makes a song. That does not. You have to like trying to make the AI do the lyrics. You can't do that. I mean, it'll come out, it'll do it, but it's not going to be worth a shit. So it takes a lot of work. I've seen her do it. And, you know, so kudos to her. But these people, they try to disparage anything we do or say. And eventually it's going to catch up to you. At this point, there's no competition. There's no anything. It's you know, you're running a race. You're so far behind, you think you're in the lead. That's the truth. We're lapping you, dudes. Okay. And you think that this is some kind of race, and it's not. If this is a race, it'd be a blowout. So keep doing and saying whatever the crap is that you do and say. It's not going to make you better. Attacking us doesn't make you better. Okay? So remember that. And, you know, this is the last time I'm even going to even appeal to you to try to be a decent person, because I don't think you know how. You don't know how to stop. And you've brought ruin to yourself, to your channel. One of his lives, it was just some nondescript live, came up with like 11,000 views in an hour. Okay. 800 views, 11,000 views, and then 700 views. Oh, come on, dude. Really? Everybody flocked over there to watch 11,000 views. So you got your government check and you went and blew it on views?
Pretty much.
That is sad. But the links that people will go to disparage you, to hurt you, to attack you, it is unquestionably demonic to do that. So anyway, you know, some friends of mine telling me I should play offense instead of defense or whatever. I mean, like, what is there to play? I'm just going to tell you what he does and what he says, and there it is.
Well, to play offense means that you have to have an opposing team. They're not.
It's got to be a competition.
Tony.
For real.
Oh my God.
Let's get the NFL guys to beat up some Pee Wee. What the heck are we talking about
The
here?
Cowboys are going to play, you know,
Yeah.
whatever.
The Kiwanis
The
team.
little
We're not even playing the
Dolphins
same-
from
Yeah.
Miller, you know.
We're not even playing the same game. We're playing football. They're playing ice hockey.
Yeah. It's crazy. Anyways, folks, that's what's going on with PRT. We'll be back tomorrow night. And everybody who wants to tell their encounters can jump on and tell their stories. We'll be here tomorrow night. Thank you to everybody who donated. Once again, thank you to everybody. We love you. Good night.